Hey, welcome to Creative Block. We're your hosts, V.
And Sean, aka Lord Spew. We talk shop with other creatives in animation and comics about things like finding your artistic path or the process of making art while we doodle on Magma.
We ask people on their social medias if they have specific topics they want us to discuss, as well as some drawing prompts. If you haven't yet, check out our Patreon and subscribe to our channel.
Today we have with us a very special guest. We have Derrick Malik Johnson. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
It's been a long time coming. I'm so excited to have you on.
And we just realized that we were ex coworkers from Midnight Gospel distantly in a distant past.
Yes, I was one of the interns. So originally back in 2019, I was brought on to Ballmaster Season 2 to do animation cleanup as an intern. And it was really during the hectic time of Titmouse. So they also asked for additional help on Midnight Gospel.
Yeah, people were switching all around in between different productions. I remember that.
Oh, man. So many. Oh, my God, those deadlines.
Well, we're skipping ahead a little bit. V, did you have an idea of a place to start here?
Oh, yeah. So I wanted to... So we had a little tiny talk right before we started the episode, and we were talking about art school. And now I'm going to put a little spin on that question. Derrick, what's your take on art school?
Ooh, so this is a juicy take, and I feel I'm going to get a lot of flack for this, but it is one that I will have to stand by. I will say no.
Ooh.
Okay.
Elaborate.
Okay, so story time. Oh God, oh man, I feel so weird saying that. Story time. I feel like a YouTuber, almost like Vsauce. Like, hello there, guys. But again, so going back to it, so I started art school back in 2017. I got kicked out of my university. I was a good grade student, but when I went to college, I kind of fell into a depression because I was by myself. Then I had to make something up for the summer because I came home and I had to make something work. So I got accepted into art school. This is where I entered my Dante Inferno's arc. I had to go through the Inferno to get to Purgatory to also find Paradiso. Yes, I will reference Dante's Inferno because that's one of my favorite classic literatures. So going to art school. I went to an art school that basically made us a master of none and a master of no trades. So it's kind of always like a gamble bag. And I tried to do this like not into dissuade students into pursuing their artistic endeavors, because again, you should always encourage those to be able to find their footing, but I also want to be able to tell them the situation behind it, because again, you are going to be spending a lot of money. You need to do your homework on where you go. It's basically where you should always do research before you move to a location, understand the geolocations and so forth. And looking back at it, would I change anything? No, because going to my art school made me kind of more endeavor, because I was kind of the odd one out in my school, especially leading up to the pandemic. So I was basically the outlier in my program because I always found it weird that my teachers would always show us YouTube videos, and I'm like, hey, so...
Not the YouTube videos.
They would constantly show like other people's tutorials, and I was just like, hey, so I know you're contacting me saying that I need to be in class to be able to get my full grades, but I, at the time, didn't feel being in class was the best choice, rather than me doing my own projects. So what happened was, when I kind of like addressed that in class, I was kind of public enemy number one from the tenure professors. So
you're like this rogue, you're like this renegade.
But it's so true though. It's like, why would I need a teacher to show me a bunch of YouTube videos I could find on my own?
I did have a teacher. I did have a teacher in a class that we realized that was just one step ahead of us in the tutorial book. He would read one step ahead in the class, and he was teaching us how to make Adobe Flash buttons. And so when we were having trouble with him, he couldn't help us problem solve anything because he was just one chapter ahead of us in the tutorial. And I was like, oh,
that's so crazy.
No, see, so I actually had that same similar story with my program. So this also still leads into it. So 2019, I get accepted into my first internship. So this also goes out to any students. So this is like a little sidetrack story. If you feel one year that or a semester that you didn't get any internships, don't let that dissuade you. Always keep trying. Constantly revamp your portfolio. Constantly reach out to people, but also learn new innovating ideas for yourself. Because take it from somebody that did not have a portfolio when he got his internship opportunity, and they will never let me live that down because I was kind of the outlier in this one. So this also goes into my origin story a little bit. The only thing I had at the time, because broke boy art student, that's the niche of it all. I did not have a portfolio. I only had my art Instagram at the time, and I would say my very provocative Twitter account, Art Twitter. That's also another side story too. But anywho, going back to that origin story. So I was able to get my internship. One of the first people in my school's program to ever land an internship at Titmouse. And I didn't know how I was going to get there. So I had to plead my case to the school and have them pay for me. Originally, they was trying to give me a loan, but since I worked in the school so much, they knew me and they were like, "Hey, what about we got additional grants? What about we just give it to him since he earned his internship and we just pay for him to go to New York?"
Oh shit!
So
that's
yeah,
nice.
I had to plead to my school for this one. So after getting everything squared away, I come to find out that the two tenure professors that really did not like me, the husband and wife duo, this is where it could have started my villain origin story. So they kind of was trying to go behind my back to try to tell the studio of saying like, "Hey, can you relinquish my internship and give it to another student that they thought was more deserving?"
What?
Yo, that's sus. That's fucking that's gnarly. That's gnarly.
Yeah, like wow. Yeah, I'm so glad that you didn't become a villain, but I would I understand.
So your position isn't just don't go to art school. Your position is destroy art schools.
Oh, fundamentally, yes. So I do believe in it. Like, again, I come from a family of educators, but I also believe in the foundations. It's just you have to have the right people there that actually have the experience that can be teaching the next generation of artists. I came from a school that basically was having teachers that did like very local but small stuff that kind of had an inflated ego. And again, it was one of their biggest downfalls because again, it was their downfall, but my kind of rising ascents. So again, going to New York, I had a great time. Unfortunately, there was a moment where I was actually going to get fired from my internship because I was falling behind. Because most of the animation techniques, but also just being able to use the animation software, and we was using Adobe Animate, I really didn't know that properly because my school didn't really train me in that. So the only way that they was teaching us how to use Adobe Animate was basically like, "Oh, you're going to learn how to make UX because Disney and them really wants you to make UX buttons for them and whatnot if you want to be a storyboard artist."
What?
Yes. So
Wait, what?
That's
yes,
so
yes,
crazy.
yes.
God.
So this was kind of like, "Oh, I'm in hell" situation. Like, oh no. Like I'm sounding like Baymax every day. Like, oh no. So it was kind of, again, I basically had to reach out to the storyboard artists, but also reaching out to the people that was in charge of me at the time. Like, "Hey, just give me a moment. Let me catch up and let me just prove that I can do it." So I worked my butt off, but also I remember when Titmouse was passing around tests, they was like, "Hey, we normally like to give out tests for the interns and just seeing like who we can retain the talent, but seeing that who also got that bug in them to see like who we can bring on." So again, you're talking to somebody that never knew how to storyboard properly. I did not know how to make an animatic. I didn't know how to do anything. So this is before Titmouse kind of changed their servers whatnot back in the day, because I think Sean can attest to this one, because again, like back then they used to have like the servers connected to like LA and the Vancouver studio. So I was able to like watch animatics when
Yeah,
I got
you're able to
permission. I was
just
like,
go on and and watch anybody's projects pretty much, like any of the
Yes.
shows, which is a little bit dangerous of them to do. But they changed it. But
yeah, they changed it. So I'm not trying to throw them under the I'm not trying to throw them under the bridge. I asked permission first. I asked permission.
It's so funny for people listening, by the way. That's basically a lot of studios now. What they do is that they only give you access to the to the production you're hired to work on.
So you can't just go see like animatics from the new season of whatever show, you know.
So if, like, for example, Titmouse is animating for a Marvel show and you've been hired for, let's say, I don't know, Midnight Gospel, then you can't see anything from that Marvel show. And I mentioned that because it's a way to prevent leaks. So that's why we're saying, like, wow, that's so crazy. But yeah, now back to the story. So you were like kind of like looking around on the server.
Yeah, so looking around, but also like just watching like past episodes of Ballmasters, because again, that was the first show that I was on. So again, just watching Ballmaster animatics and just picking up like the formula and being like, oh, so this is actually like how you craft storyboards. So I used to talk to the board artists at lunch. Yeah, so there's also like a lot of politics too, like when you're on an internship. So again, students who are on internships, make sure you follow the actual company's rules. Don't be like me. Don't be a troublemaker, because you're going to make more issues than needs to be, because sometimes you have to go through certain protocols to like get in contact with the artist.
Your school has to vouch for you and stuff. Yeah.
So again, the artist was really cool. Like, we still talk to this very day. So again, I created a storyboard back in my hot dorm room that I was staying at, because this was kind of like the hottest heat wave summer in New York back in 2019. So again, crafted the storyboard, and the rest was kind of history for me a bit. It was kind of a white blur. So again, wrapping up on the show, then it was asking help for like, hey, we need additional layout people for Midnight Gospel, because it was just a lot of assets. So again, the interns, we got together, we was helping out with them, and then came intern, like I believe it was like the intern day evaluation, where they used to bring in like the directors for like background animations and so forth. So again, everybody else is having like their portfolios being evaluated and their tests submitted, and I kind of felt like the outlier, because I was like, oh snap, like I don't have a portfolio. I kind of feel like a hack right now. The only thing I got is this test, and I don't think it's going to be good enough. So it was finally my turn. I kind of told them, I was like, hey, I don't have a portfolio. They was like, that's all right, like just let us see like what you had to begin with. So showed them my Instagram, but I was like, hey, I did a test. Can you guys see it real quick? So they was like, yeah, put it up on the screen real quick. As the day was going through it, the animation director at the time, he was looking at me for a second. He looked back at the boards. He looked back at me, and then he looked back at the boards. And then for the last time, he looked back at me. He's like, did you make these? I was like, yeah. I was like, is there a problem? He was like, son of a bitch, we could have hired you for like the last episode.
Oh, that's cool.
Whoa, that's a compliment.
That is so cool.
I was kind of flabbergasted for a second. I was like, oh my god, like I'm kind of like taken aback like a little bit, because I was like, oh, for a second I thought I was in trouble. He was like, no, he was like, I'm kind of busy right now, but he was like, let's set up time to go get coffee real quick. But he was like, I'm also going to talk to the studio manager, but also talk to the show creator, Christy K, when he gets back. He was like, do you mind? I was like, no, dude, absolutely, like I would be honored. So a few days later, the studio manager at Titmouse New York came to my desk, and at the time, I guess the studio manager wasn't known to talk to interns or be seen out of her office. And people was kind of like, what's going on over here? So go to her office. She's like, you got some good boards here. She was like, I ain't got no work right now. I want you to go back to school, and we're gonna be in contact. I want you to make a portfolio and go back to school, and we're going to be in contact. So after my internship, this is where my hell came to existence.
Oh no.
So
the roller coaster, it goes like, I'm like, you're like so high right now, like yay, all the doors are opening, and then oh my god.
So yeah, it was, I'm happy, but then when I was coming back home, it was rude awakenings. So again, I came back from a very successful internship. Basically, I got passed out at like an 85% because my school was asking for like a grade evaluation. Titmouse was like, yeah, he was a little bit hard headed in the beginning, but he really came strong. So 85%. So I was like, oh, okay. I could have got a 90, but okay. 85, I can live with that. Um, so again, just coming back, the other students were asking me for advice because they was like, "Oh my God, like you got an internship at Titmouse, like nobody ever got an internship there." I was like, "Yeah, like if you need help, I got your back. Like I took like a lot of notes in New York, and I'm willing to share."
Mhm.
So the two tenures, the husband and wife duo, I call them affectionately as the BS couple because their first name starts with B and the other one starts with an S.
That's funny.
Um, they didn't like that.
Oh,
They
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 didn't
didn't
like that you were like people were like coming to you for advice.
Yeah, they didn't like that. So it was a lot of things that were starting to happen to where we were constantly like getting almost into like screaming matches.
Oh
The teacher was
no.
trying to like yell and holler at me for being disrespectful, but at the same time, again, I was here doing my work. There were times to like when they were sending emails to the president, and at the time, I was thankful to the chair of my program because me and him had a really good relationship, and he told me from the email. Like he showed me what the email said, and basically they were asking for my removal from the program to the president of the
Whoa.
Wait, so,
school.
so what was it that you were doing was so bad? I don't understand. You were
So
just telling them what
they,
working at Titmouse is like? I don't understand. Like, did you teach your
so
own
they,
class?
no, no,
Did you
no,
take a
Did you?
closet and
so
turn it into a classroom and start teaching? What did you do?
no, it was no, no, no. So it was basically where they didn't really like me for being like somewhat of a disruptive student, and they felt as though that I was becoming a disruptive student in their program, and they didn't like that they was having somebody argue against their line of thinking because coming
Hmm.
back like in my senior year, you know, like how most art kids like you have to do like a senior thesis and
Yeah.
everything. Well, our thesis was robbed because we had to work on their projects, the husband and wives duos.
Oh.
Yeah, we had to work on their projects because they was outsourcing, like they was getting outsourced to do work for the city, and then it was like, hey, if you're a senior, you have to work on these projects or you can't pass my class. And I was like, that's bullshit. Like we become seniors and we've earned the right to make our own projects and we should have something to be proud of, not your work.
Also,
So it
you're paying to attend the school and like they're profiting of work that you're doing. Ooh,
Yeah, that's so shady. That
that's
really
so
is
it
shady.
shady.
it
Yeah.
was to the point to where I was constantly having battles every day, but also going to the dean. And the dean at the time, like he was trying to do his best because he was like, yo, he was like, I know that they're targeting him. And then after like my departure from the school, we come to find out that these two had almost 15 years worth of problems on them because I wasn't the only
Oh.
student, like the
Hmm.
only person of
Okay.
color.
Hmm.
So it kind of started putting like two plus two together. So leading up to like one of these final events to where I was just saying like I'm kind of done with this is going back to that email, and I read what they said and it was the most heinous shit I ever read. It was to the
Wow.
point to where I had to keep a smile on my face until I left that school, and I just remember calling my great grandmother, breaking down, crying,
That's
and she
crazy. Wait,
in the thing.
what a state? What state were you in?
Oh, I was in Michigan.
Michigan. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. And and was it a private or was it like a public
Mm-mm.
school?
No, I would say semi-private, but
Okay.
again, it was kind of like a lot of stuff to it. So like just leading up to it, I had a conversation with my great grandmother, and when I knew I was done is when I heard her cry, and she was like,
Yeah.
and she was just like, I'm just so tired of them treating you like this.
Yeah. Hmm.
So I started closing myself off a bit, and then when the pandemic started leading way, April. So leading up, it was kind of like when we got the notice of like, hey, everybody's gonna go back home for a bit. We're just gonna make sure like we're gonna come back in a week. We're gonna come back stronger, and so forth. Well,
Hmm.
a week didn't happen.
Hmm.
During that time, Titmouse actually reached out to me, and they was like, "Hey," they was like, "Did you get our email?" I was like, because they reached out to me on my Instagram, and I was like, wait, what email? This was a Sunday. They sent me an email back on Wednesday. They were like, a test. They were like, yeah, we sent you a test opportunity. And they were like, do you want to take it? They were like, the test is due Monday, but today's Sunday. Well, it's Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, yeah, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna take the test. So this also goes for students too. Don't have them send stuff to your student email because sometimes you may not get the notification. Always have your personal email.
Yeah, and they can take
great.
off your student email at some point. So
that's great advice. Actually, make sure that it's your personal email. Yeah.
So it was. They reached out to me at the time. And they was like, hey, we're going to have you do a test for the upcoming show, Harry the Spy. And I was just like, okay, I'm gonna try my best. I was still doing my schoolwork. And I was like, I'm gonna try knocking this out within a day. So 50 panels, going back, cleaning up 10, and just submitting it. And I was just like, okay, I'm kind of like just tapping my leg patiently. I was like, ooh, this could be a make or break situation for me. This would decide my fate.
Mm-hmm.
And every day during the pandemic, like me and my great grandmother, we would have our little prayer session.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one day that changed.
Oh.
Because she went very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
So, oh God, talking about this one kind of
sorry about that.
Me back.
But it's part of your story.
It's really hard.
You know?
Yeah.
It means a lot to you.
Mm-hmm. It's also really nice to hear like that you had such a caring and supportive presence. It's so important in a creative journey to have someone that is there supporting you, because like creative work sometimes can really there's so much self-doubt, you know, there's so many reasons to give up, so having someone that's like in your corner, and especially hearing everything you went through, you know.
Yeah, it was something. So I can remember it was like the night before. It was almost like a few days before I had this dream after her passing. And at the time, I was supposed to be moving to New York because they were like, hey, even still during the pandemic, they were like, hey, we want you in New York. And I got like a voicemail from her. So I vaguely remember the voicemail, and I just woke up and I was like, oh my God, like I got to check my phone. The voicemail wasn't there, but I checked my email, and Tim Mouse was like, hey, you got the job. So
What?
I think
awesome.
So I just I always think back to that, and I was like, I think that was like my great grandmother like final hoorah to me.
Oh my God, that is such a crazy story. Wow.
And it came just in time. Like it was like, you know, you didn't know what you were gonna do if you didn't get that job. It seemed like you were at a point in transition in your life where, you know, yeah, that's nuts.
That's so crazy. And so did you move, or did you stick around to Michigan?
Nope, I stayed in Michigan. I moved back to my hometown because my uncle, he was like, I'm coming to get you. We're moving you out of your student apartment, and we're going to have you go back home. So I went back home, did my work. I was able to work with Titmouse for a bit leading up to the end of my contract. And funny enough, like leading into like, so this is kind of like where the story starts to uplift a little bit, because I was starting to venture into my art, because once I accepted like that job offer, I was like, I'm done. Like basically I put up the peace signs, dropped the mic, and I was like, I'm out. Like almost like Obama, like I'm out. Like just fingers up, I'm out. So Mike dropped everything. So I left my art school and I became the renegade. I just became the renegade because I was like, oh, Tim House knocked on my door for a job opportunity. Yeah, I'm going. So again, just being able to work remote, and then just being able to like come into my own as a storyboard artist, but as a revisionist first, because I still didn't know how to fucking use Toon Boom Harmony. So yeah, I had to teach myself that on the job. So
that's crazy.
I learned it on the job too.
Wait, Harmony or Storyboard Pro? Because I feel like Storyboard Pro on the job doable. Harmony hard.
No. Sorry. Storyboard Pro learned on the job. Harmony still don't know.
I don't know Harmony either. You're not alone, buddy. You're not alone. But yeah, like with Storyboard Pro, I was still teaching and learning myself. Again, got up to the final episode, and it was, oh God, it was February of 2021, actually. Yep. So I was coming up like my final few months on my job contract because I was still contracted for January, like not January, but June 10th. No, June 11th. June 11th of 2021 because this leads into the story.
Ooh.
So back in February 2021, I was like, man, I was like, I really got to come up together with a portfolio piece. And I was like, fudge, like, what am I supposed to do? So I was like, what am I supposed to put in my portfolio, like my portfolio as a revisionist? So at the time, I reached out to my soon to become boss, Ben Joanno, on Twitter.
Ooh,
And
so
I
cool.
was asking portfolio advice. I was like, hey, like, Ben, sorry to bother you. Like, I just listened to this Toon Boom interview that you did with Jesse, and I really wanted your help. I was like, I know your body of work. I've been following you for a few years now. I was like, is there any advice that you would give to somebody that's looking to increase their portfolio as a revisionist? And I immediately got hit like with 35 messages from Ben. It was like ding 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 ding
Oh,
ding.
that's so
I was
sick.
like, I
Ben
was
is
like, I
so
was like,
cool.
Jesus. I
By
was
the
like,
way, for people listening, Benjuno episode 106 on Creative Block. Really, really, really cool episode. He's so nice. I love that he like immediately responded and DM'd you. Yeah.
yeah, like Ben is like one of the nicest people that I ever got to work with. And everybody was telling me like, look, because I've been like again, I haven't worked in LA. I've always been remote, so people was just telling me like their past experience, and I was like, I'm not really getting that from him. I was like, yeah, I'll take your advice cautiously, but I was like, yeah, he seems like a nice guy to me. So I remember fixing my portfolio up, and he was like, man, he was like, yeah, he was like, you did a really good job in the past few days, and just adding the stuff to your portfolio. And he was like, hey, he was like, I can't promise anything or I can't guarantee anything, but he was like, are you free to do an interview by chance? And I was like, yeah. He was like, I want you to send me some work. And I was like, hey, can I actually redo the test that I did for Titmouse? And he was like, yes. He was like, that actually shows your improvement. So he was like, I want to see the original and I want to see like I kind of like want to see the updated pass. So that's what I kind of did. I put that in my portfolio. And kids, always put yourself behind passwords. Don't put that out for the public to see. Um,
Uh-oh, something happened?
no.
Okay.
I'm just saying that just in
Okay.
general because sometimes people like they will put their test out publicly, and I'm like, uh, yeah, you got to be careful with that.
Especially if there's
Um,
NDA stuff on it.
yes, I remember seeing a student one time they posted their NDA work, and this was for video games, and yeah, that was a whole can of worms.
Mhm.
So students, please have password protected or have like an offshore like Google Drive that you give to people like recruiters.
Mhm.
So
That's
anywho, going back to this one. So yeah, submitted my stuff to him. Ben was going on vacation for a bit, but they reached out to me and they was like, hey, Ben told us about you. We want to set up an interview when he gets back. So when Ben got back to the interview, he was kind of telling me like what the show was going to be about. And this was for Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur. I didn't know at the time, but this was for Moon Girl.
mm.
So first interview, he was kind of telling me the flavor, like the feeling of the show, the flavor of the show. He showed me like an animatic sample to like potential hirees, me like, hey, are you interested in this? And it was the Earl sweatshirt. It was like the I said Earl sweatshirt. No, it was Childish Gambino, Donald Glover,
Okay.
sweatpants.
Mm.
It was the animatic for the original pilot, but it became like the later episode, like with Gravitas and all of them.
Mm.
And I just remember just being blown away by it. I was like, you can make shows like this? Like
Mm.
Disney is stepping up to make shows like this? So, and he was like, yeah, man. He was like, this is what the show is going to be like. And he was like, do you think you're interested? I immediately told them, and I was like, you're going to hire me. You're going to hire me immediately. And he just laughed at me. He was like, dude, he was like, I got interviews with other people. I was like, I'm stubborn. You're going to hire me because I was like, you're not going to show me something this special, and I can't be on this project. I was like,
Mm.
I got little nieces and I got little cousins that can see themselves in Lunella, and if I can have any chance of working on this show, I'm taking that chance. So he was like, you know what? He was like, let's keep in touch. So then we were able to set up like the second interview. I was able to do it with my producer. And then we did like I came back for like the final interview. And I was just like, we set it up, and he was like, you know why I brought you back, right? I was like, I got the job. He was like, yes. He was like, I'm bringing you on for Moon Girl and Double Dinosaur.
Hey, that's so
Yay!
sick.
That is so cool. And I will say, I like that you were so forward with your excitement about the show, because sometimes I hear discourse of like, oh, you gotta like play hard to get, or like not be too excited. But in my experience, it's been quite the opposite, actually. I feel like when I've said in interviews like, oh, I'm really excited about this project and I really want to work on it, the chances of them getting back to me with a positive response has been way higher
They
than
want to know you're
interviews.
into it. They want someone who
Yeah.
really likes the show, you know?
No, but you know how there's like sometimes there's like advice where it's like, oh, just
Yeah.
kind of play it cool. And I'm like, I don't really think that is the way to go. I think it's better
Yeah.
to, show that you're like,
We're not pickup artists negging a woman at a bar and
Yeah.
pretending to not notice them or something. We're like, you know, we're selling yourself to be the best candidate to work on a job because we're excited.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my God.
No,
That is
that's, I don't know. I'm about to say that's absolutely true, man. I'm just like, again, just I was just like after that first interview, I was so scared because I was like, I might have overstepped. I was like,
mm,
I was gunning for that one after I saw the animatics, and I was like, I'm in love with this show, and I don't even know what this show is about to be about. So after that interview, I did read up on the original comics of Moon Girl to like get an idea for it.
Mm-hmm.
Again, like I was like Amazon immediately. I was like, give me the collections. I want to read Moon Girl. So again, at that point in time, I got hired in for the job. I was so nervous. I was like, oh my God, I'm like, who? Because everybody was like, back then, it was like, well, you normally, like, your first time jobs, you're not going to get the Disney job. Like, you're not going to work for these big companies. But I was like, my second job, I get to work at Disney. Like, who's not excited to work at Disney?
mm-hmm.
So because again, I just felt like that kid from the Midwest that always dreamt of just drawing for a living, and now I get to draw for a company that, again, like some of their greatest works inspired me to draw as a
Mm-hmm.
kid.
Mm-hmm.
So just being able to just say like I got a job at Disney. So leading up to my final day at Titmouse, it was July 11th, 2021. My first day of work at Disney was June 14th, 2021. I literally had that weekend to rest and be right there in the morning for my shift. And I was just like, whoo boy, I thought I was gonna be able to have a week off. Yeah, the rest was kind of history, man. And like just being able to like work on Moon Girl. At the time I was working on the later half of season 1 as a revisionist. And then around season 2, Ben was like, hey, he was like, you guys are floaters. And he was like, do you guys want to learn how to do storyboarding? He was like, we can have you board some stuff on the show and it can really help you improve your stuff. And I was like, yeah, I want to learn. Like, let's do it. The world will never see my first animatic pass for Moon Girl ever in their life. If Ben, whoever is hearing this, if y'all ever release that from the vault, I will not claim that as me. If you show that scene, I will never claim it as me.
What happened? What is it? Is it just because it's your first board, so you're just kind of like, no?
It was awful. Like I didn't know that this show we had to board towards sound for our animatics. So I was just basically boarding to the script. Timing was off. My scenes, I was so embarrassed. I was like, oh my God, I was clutching my pearls. I was like, I'm about to get fired.
Oh no.
Like,
well,
no.
You know, I'm assuming that you probably got the award for most improved on the show then.
I would hope so. Again, it was just basically like a lesson learned of knowing the show, and this kind of like went forward with like any show that I like worked on, is getting the chance to know the show but also understanding the energy of the show. Again, like I did not used to ask questions, but man, after that first pitch, I used to ask questions all the time. I was like, how can I make this better? Am I doing this properly? How can I break the scene down? What can I do to like just go forward with this? And I'm thankful that Ben and directors at the time took me under their wings, and it was like, again, it was a very healthy production where they was uplifting a lot of people, and it was like, hey, we see that you got that spark in you. We want to be able to nurture it. We want to be able to show it.
Mm.
And they trusted me with a lot more scenes down the road to where it gave me the confidence that I needed to improve.
That's awesome.
So I will always be grateful to Ben and the directors of Moon Girl for just sticking out with me.
It's so cool that you also got that opportunity through just like reaching out to Ben for advice, and then like he noticed your work. I think that's also super cool. That like that's a form of networking that is very kind of like low key, I guess. Like it's not too obvious. And I don't even know, when you reached out to him, were you thinking of like it as networking at all, or were you just like, oh, I just want some advice?
You literally, like, help,
Yeah.
police, help, police, like, I need help. Like, I'm over here crying, like, I need help. Like, I've fallen and I can't get up type of help.
I feel like it's a good example. More experienced artists being more willing and more likely to help and get invested in someone if they're coming to them with humility. They're coming to them in not like a way like, hey, I'm good, give me a job. You came with kind of like an open heart to like, hey, I'm displaying my weaknesses out in front of you. Can you please help me? I want to gain some of your wisdom. And I think that someone who wants to learn that looks favorable in a situation like that.
Oh, absolutely. And I tell this to students all the time. It's like, because sometimes I've have seen students that, like, when they reach out, they sometimes will have like ill intentions of just like, yo, give me a job. And it's just like, you can't look at it like that. You gotta be humble a little bit, but you also gotta know like where your weakness and your strengths comes. But also when you're addressing somebody but also seeking help, you gotta know where you come from, if where you're trying to go. And at the time, I knew that I was a revisionist, and I was like, I wanted to improve how to be a revisionist, but also like how to venture into becoming a board artist.
Because on Midnight Gospel, you were doing revisions on boards, or you were doing assets. I'm just trying to remember.
Oh yeah, I was actually doing layout. So
Ooh, okay.
I was helping out with layout. So for Midnight Gospel, they would basically give us like the Adobe animate scenes, and it was like, hey, whatever the storyboards are asking, put the assets in the files and make sure that it's packaged properly for the animator, so the animator then got to start looking for like everything. So I was just doing layout back then.
Ooh, okay.
Like,
That's very interesting. So can you tell us a little bit more about this? Just because layout, we've talked about layout on this show a little bit,
Layout
but
is almost extinct. Layout isn't
almost
done very much.
exactly. Not only is it almost extinct, but also the previous version of what layout used to be, it was the artist was kind of drawing all of the assets to make sure they're at the right size.
yep.
But for you, it sounds like you're dropping in assets. Are you also sizing them? Like what's kind of
So
like, yeah, the step
Yep.
by
So a lot
steps.
of time, yep. So a lot of times we were actually, because again, like with Adobe Animate, a lot of those assets were symbol based. So all we had to just go in there, increase, decrease the size, making sure that they're at the right size for the
Hmm.
animators. Just making sure that we just pop like the information down properly and just go from there. I didn't really know much at the time about that. I was just like, oh well, like I'm a stupid intern. Like I'm gonna do it because again, like I really didn't know like what I was doing back then. Um, and it's funny enough that when I think back to my internship experience, they was like, hey, you got like this anime cartoon vibe. We like that. And we got a show. And we're going to bring you on to do that.
Mm.
And that's essentially how I was just doing cleanup animation for Ballmaster. And then it was like, hey, we just need additional help on Midnight Gospel because it's all hands on deck. It like, every time I think about this, I was like, it was a time like where Titmouse, New York, if you've been to the New York studio, you know like how small that one floor is. Everybody was in that office to where like the intern station did not exist anymore. It was like people was coming in using our workstations.
Dude, the
Oh
team for Midnight
wow.
Gospel was enormous. I think it was like 150
Yeah.
people in total in between all the studios because there's so much redrawing on that show.
It's such a
Man,
crazy show. I can't even believe it got made. Sometimes I'm like, it's such a intense, like labor intensive show. That's so crazy. And so for animation cleanup, it's cool that you worked on Ball Masters because I somehow I thought that was a much older show. I didn't know it was just so recent.
yeah, it's a recent show.
It's so
Yeah, because
cool.
it's the show that came after Super Jail.
Yeah,
Super
and
Jail was
somehow
done, and then Ballmasters happened.
and then
Yeah.
Ballmasters, for some reason, I got it mixed up, and I thought Ballmasters was his first show before Super Jail. But Ballmasters is such a cool. It's got such a cool style where like everything's kind of like etched and
It's like
everything. That's
dirty
also
anime, like dirty
yeah,
anime. Kind
I thank you. So thank you for saying that because I've been saying this for the longest time. I was like, okay, so we have Triggers Panty and Stocking, like Gynax / Triggers Panty and Stocking, where they are like an homage to American cartoons. I was like, Ballmasters is the gritty Super Jail version of anime meets
Yeah.
Super Jail
yeah.
as an
hmm
homage to to anime, and I'm like, yes. Like I want to work on this project so much. Like Flip is my favorite character in that show because he's like this, like he's basically Fist of the North Star like knockoff. He's just like an anime rep, and I'm just like, I love everything about this. Like it makes no sense, but I love everything about this.
This show is so crazy. I love it so much. Oh my God.
It's a hilarious show that always holds a special place in my heart.
That must have been like so how much work is it to do any like cleanup on Ball Masters compared to I'm jumping a little bit ahead to like working on animation for anime. And was any of the skills transferable between the two?
So a little bit. So anywho, so yeah, actually going on to your question, so let me actually answer that question, but also lead into another one, especially since I know a lot of people here might be interested in pursuing anime.
Uh-huh.
Don't be like me. Start at the bottom. Start as Doga and Negan, and I will explain this very, 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 very carefully. So, Doga and Negan. Negan is basically to in between animation.
Mhm.
Again, like when you like look at the classic films over at Disney, especially it was feature when they used to do 2D, in-betweeners were basically like the apprentices and students. That was kind of like, okay, I can understand the characters, but I can also start working underneath to the masters to try to absorb their skills and so forth. Doga is basically cleanup animators. So if you could start as cleanup and then work your way into like an in-betweener, that's the smart route.
Mhm.
Again, invest your time, learn your craft, and also learn the software behind like what we use in anime because
What do
this is where I
you
have this is where I have a love-hate relationship with anime because everybody and a freaking mother wants to use Clip Studio Paint and I hate that software for animating. It does not work for animating.
That's so funny that it doesn't work for animating. I that's
Shots
what I use all
fired.
the I use it all the time for illustrating, but I have yet to learn it for animating.
And that's where we want to thank our sponsors, Clip Studio Paint. Thank you for. No.
Dude, I would love that. We should reach out to them.
We'll use this clip. We'll use this clip where you're screaming about how it doesn't
See what
work
I'm
for
about to say?
animation.
But I'm about to say if they listen to the full thing, they will hear what I have to say. I'm just like, why?
Clip it out of context.
Yeah, why? I have to do the Bernie impression. Like my hands are up. Like wait a minute. So with everything else, it's kind of like now I hated the concept of using clip for animating, but I hate that I've grown to like it for animating.
Uh-huh. There it
So
is.
there's a duality in that one. So how I jumped into anime, so I essentially did like I'm essentially doing layout and then I'm going to be doing Ginga.
hmm
So layout is kind of like oh God, what's the equivalency in the American production? So basically think somebody joining into the industry and they're basically becoming a storyboard supervisor,
I see.
like a storyboard lead or somebody like that of that caliber. Because layout essentially lays down the foundation from the storyboards. They're essentially doing like the key animations, but also like mapping out like the timing and then like suggesting like where the breakdowns are going to be. And then they're going to be working with the directors of saying like, hey, like this is how we're going to fix the timing. We're going to go back here and so forth. I'm going to do a draw over real quick and make sure that your characters are on model, and then you're going to do like a secondary pass, and then we're going to pass that off for Ginga. Well, for your first keys, and then we're going to start having like the in-betweeners come in, and then your Ginga pass and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
So are you checking things and making sure they're on model or something? What? I just want to make sure we're really clear about what Ginga is.
Yeah, so Ginga is kind of like the polished pass. So you have to make those look nice. A lot of people, especially for layout, a lot of people don't draw on model apparently. Because I've been on a few projects already, and that's kind of been somewhat of the issue. I really haven't had that problem yet because I take the character sheets and I just trace over them a little bit just so I can get familiar with the characters.
Mm-hmm.
And again, just being able to draw like that, but again, just being able to work in anime, I've come to find out that I had somewhat of a strong presence of a draftsman. So it was kind of like a quick dive in for me. It's still like a lot of learning curves, but again, to anybody that wants to do anime, storyboarding, even character designing, you like, again, learn the fundamentals, improve upon the fundamentals, so that when you are going from project to project, that you can be a perfect chameleon and understand the physics and logic behind that world and those designs.
Yeah, that's really good advice. I do agree. It's funny that you bring that up because I forget where I read this. I don't think it was an interview on Creative Block, but I read that someone said that in manga and anime, artists usually learn more by copying art rather than they learn through classic, like, foundation.
Absolutely. So this also ventures into my other art story. So, okay, so y'all already had Malik on the podcast, so I feel like I can go into this territory.
Oh, yeah. I was going to ask you that because you said that you had a spicy Twitter, and I was like, oh, can we get into this? Because I know we have listeners that are really interested in these questions as well.
Yep. So TLDR, I kind of like have like a pride of this because it is where I started. And it actually goes back to my origin story a little bit too. I started as a not safe for work artist, especially like when I started in college, because I wanted to improve my drawing. So I started venturing into doing spicy art because I was like, ooh, I like cheesecake pinup, but also I love like how the body is interpreted, because I was like, there's such fascinating ways that you can like draw these designs. But again, just being able to like have like your interests and you're being able to explore like your identity a bit. I was like, I think every artist should be encouraged to draw this, because being able to get out of your comfort zone and embracing what we tend to overlook as like, ooh, like I can't perceive that because it's like, oh, you filthy infidels type.
Can I say a take real quick? It's not, and then we can get right back to you. It's about spicy art. In my opinion, the posing when friends or acquaintances of mine do spicy art, most of the time it's the best posing that I've ever seen them do. And I don't know whether it's like people have like the stock standard posing that they normally do, and then when they do spicy art, they're trying to affect themselves emotionally a little bit more or something. But there is something about tapping into the emotional effect of whether it's trying to turn yourself on or turn other people on or what, that make people do the wildest, most creative poses, figure drawing poses that I've seen of their work.
No, you're absolutely is. Again, like I remember students asking me this question one time, and then they hated me for like suggesting this, and I was just like, yo, again, like I've seen it happen. Like I've seen people that have ventured in to doing not safer work, and again, everybody wants to draw the occasional booba or pastrami loaf. Again, it's you having fun with it, but also like finding. I think
that's the worst word that I would have used for pastrami loaf.
Pastrami is so funny. I've never heard that. I was like, it's so funny.
I was going to say salami, but again, I want to keep this on the podcast PG at best, because I can venture into doing like.
Listen, we had Balak on though.
I was about to say, like I could be like Bella. Like let me get my thick French French accent, and we're going to start talking about
you don't have to have a French accent to say bad words on here. But
talking about not safe for work and French accent, Balek's episode is number 133. If you, dear listener, want to hear another episode with a working industry professional who also has a strong not safe for work presence online.
Absolutely. And again, like, I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus. It's just one of those things to where I think, like, it's the comfortability of an artist. It's like, I think as an artist, we tend to improve, like, once we free ourselves from those shackles. And over the years, like, once I started embracing it more and more, I was like, I kind of want to stand by it more and more. Even like why nowadays, like, if you go like on my social media, like my Blue Sky and stuff like that, I'm upfront. I tell people, it's like, hey, this is a safe work and not safe work account. So if you got Puritan eyes, please leave.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, and you don't have to answer that question, but it sounds like you had like a pretty religious upbringing. How do you easily just kind of go into not safe for work without feeling too much?
How many times you have to pray a day to counter affect the spicy content?
Oh, okay. So this actually goes another deep dive. So yes, I did grow up in the church for a bit. That was up until I was 7 years old. Then I went to go live with my biological father in Florida with my older brother for a year and a half. And then we moved with my mom out to Las Vegas, and where I grew up for the remaining of my teenage to early adult, like to my early adult years. And then I moved back home back in 2012. So I've been okay and open-minded to the idea of sex and to the ideology behind it, because again, I grew up in you grew up in two of the most heavy populated cities and areas of the United States that have like Sin City capital. Again, I grew up in Las Vegas. It's Sin City. Like, everything happens in Vegas.
And then you have Florida Man in the news. Local Florida Man is always in the news doing some eating someone's face.
Exactly. It's, again, there's certain things to where I started to get like a little bit more world knowledge, because again, like a lot of my friends were coming from like aspects of life and understanding, and it was just like, yeah, you really shouldn't be ashamed of it, but you also, again, like, you shouldn't really hide the fact either. It's just like, this is stuff that is evolutionary. It's I hate to be the one to say it on a podcast, but it's just like, like, how do you think you got here on this planet? So somebody got their back broke. So so I don't know what to tell you now.
Yeah,
but it's one
so
of those
funny.
It's one of those things. It's kind of like, it really didn't faze me for the longest. Like, yeah, like I used to be embarrassed by drawing it back in the day, but I mean, like, I had an older brother that used to snoop through everything, so there was no hiding everything from like my older brother. Like, we were like 1 year apart, and I was like, this motherfucker gonna throw me under the bus. So now we're at a place of like loving and understanding. But also, going back to it, once I got to college and I really started like having like a little bit more independence and I was venturing into it, when I went to art school, especially like during the pandemic, like my great grandmother, she was very scared for me, because she was like, well, you're not working. So she was like, how are you making money while still going to school? And I was like, well, I'm doing commissions. She was like, oh, so you're doing artwork. She was like, so what you drawing, baby? I was like, Granny, now you part of the church now. I can't be showing you this. You a lady of the Lord. You've been serving God for like decades. I can't do this. So it was basically like that embarrassed Kankashi, like where he had to like read the passages of Make Out Paradise. And when she was like, oh, I want to see some of your work, I'm just like, Granny, no.
I like that you didn't lie, that you're like, you can't see it.
Like, I couldn't lie to my granny. I was like, bro, it's like, at the point, it's like, look, bro, you talking to an underdog. Like, I fought all my life. Like,
she's like, boys will be boys.
Oh man, her disappointed voice is like, bro, just fucking hit me, man. Like, I'd rather you just hit me. Just don't say that I'm disappointed in you. Like, I just start crying like Gumball, like, like just putting up my hands. So I sent her some of the art pieces because she wouldn't drop it. And she immediately called me. She was like, baby, this is some of the greatest art that I've seen. She was like, why? She was like, now, why did you try to hide this from me? I was like, I didn't think that you would like it. She was like, this is tasteful art. She was like, stand by your art, baby. And I was like, I think I had that moment.
Seen the one with the tentacles?
Oh no, she saw that too. So she was very encouraging. She was like,
that's nice.
Because at first she thought I was selling drugs, and I was like, no. So I was just doing art. So she was like, my God. She was like, I thought you was doing drugs, like selling drugs. Okay.
That's how you do it. That's how you do it.
Yeah.
You gotta at first kind of make them think of something way worse, and then when it's just like the furry stuff. I mean, I don't know if you drew furries, but then they're like, okay, that's
here and there.
Oh, you're just drawing sexy women doing drugs.
Yeah, a little bit Wonder Bread art here and there. But no, she was very supportive, and they're like the other family members, like my mom, my grandmother. They were like, oh, like this ain't bad work. She was like, have fun. So after that, I was kind of like, really the matriarch of my family. I was like, I really don't have anything to hide. Like I could really care less. Like my great grandmother, she knew about it. She was very supportive of it. I'm not going to trip about it. So I was kind of like, you know what? Screw it. I'm encouraged to put both of these like side by sides. And that's when Blue Sky came around. I was like, screw it. I'm gonna just make these side by sides with one another, like safe for work and not safe for work, just together in harmony. And I've gotten some good results out of that. Now, going back a few years ago, I remember because I only had my not safe for work Twitter, but the Titmouse people found me. And they followed my account. And the animation director at the time, he messaged me and he was like, hey, your art looks familiar. He was like, was you at my studio not too long ago? I was like, oh my God. I was like, it's finally happened. I was like, hey, yeah, I was the intern. And he was like, son of a bitch, why didn't you bring this energy to your work when you was when you was on my show? He was like, you can transfer that energy to something positive on my show. And I was like, you can do that? He was like, absolutely. He was like, this is another skill set in a trade. He was like, never hide your skills because you hone them to a level that you wanted them to be.
So this is going to be something that a lot of students are really worried about, that if they do spicy art, that it will jeopardize their ability to get on shows. And it's one of the reasons why I animate under an alias. Like that, when I first started out, I was worried that like no one would want to hire me at Disney if they saw me animating people exploding and they're punching each other and like whatever. But it just goes to show that like all the people at these studios are perverts too.
Honestly, like, yeah. Look, I'm gonna take a quote from Freaknik the musical. Everybody got a little bit of freak in them.
Yeah, that's true.
Everybody got a little bit of freak in them. It's just like, bro, be cringe and be free.
Yes.
Be cringe and be free, my younger princess. Again, like, don't hold yourself back. And again, it's a nice little metric to be able to skill yourself. It's just like, because again, when you're doing spicy art and provocative art, you're looking at the matter, like again, like going back to the posing, or like you're looking back into the stylization of it. Now you're looking into experimenting, especially like if you start venturing like more into painting and sculpture. It's like, yeah, you're starting to understand the flow and posing, and that really increases your skill set. And I was like, you shouldn't discourage that. If anything, you should be applauding it. And that actually goes back to another story in art school, because when I was also during the pandemic, my character design teacher, she was really cool by it. She was like, hey, you haven't submitted any of your classwork. Like, what's going on? I was like, I'm kind of busy doing commissions right now. Can I submit my work later? She was like, show me the commissions. I was like, these are not safe for works. She was like, show me the commissions. So when I showed her my commissions, she was like, you are doing better than most of the students in my class. She was like, I'm going to use these as your class examples, and you automatically pass.
Whoa.
Oh, that's so cool. Wow, that is so nice. Oh yeah, my gosh. Yeah.
So it's like, again, if like with stuff like that, it's like, don't hide a part of you away.
It's figure drawing.
Yeah.
I mean, essentially, yeah. Essentially, just animated figure drawing. There you go. Provocative figure drawing. There you go.
Provocative figure drawing. That's so funny. That's so true. Oh my gosh. It's funny too, because I feel like, I mean, I don't know. Let's talk about a little bit. How do you how did you get commissions actually? Because I think that can be kind of hard sometimes for artists who are just starting out or who don't have like a big presence. What's your how did you set it up? Are you doing like PayPal? Like what's your
Yep. So with PayPal, you got to be careful because PayPal has started hitting a lot of accounts,
Mhm.
especially to those, especially like again, there was a credit card. So again, they don't like provocative, not safe for work content being sold and distributed.
Yeah, Stripe is the same way. If they find out
Yeah,
that
Mhm.
you're selling something that
they nuke your account.
right.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's a great question you asked actually. So like because are you still doing commissions or no?
Yeah, I still do commissions, but I'm very careful with my stuff because again, I mark all my commissions as like illustrations because that's
Mhm.
exactly what they are. They're just illustrations.
Oh, so that's how you put it down so they can't track it.
Mm-hmm. Just
Mm.
illustrations because that's exactly what they are. They're just
Wait, before
illustrations.
were you labeling it as like XXX slimy
Some
woman
people
gets
were.
rammed? Like what? How are you
No,
labeling it
some
before?
just illustrations. I've
Okay,
always
okay,
labeled my stuff as illustrations
okay.
because I used to see people back in the day. They'd be like, "Oh, well, this is provocative illustrations." I'm like, "You're automatically getting flagged."
Yeah.
Mhm.
So again, you have to be careful, and you also have to know how to play the game because there's one thing that I truly believe in, and is if you're not out here doing anything illegal, get your bag.
Mhm.
Absolutely get your bag. While also honing and crafting your skills, and that should
Yeah.
be encouraged more. And for anybody that's looking to expand upon like their networking and then like trying to build a community for themselves, I would say Twitter, but I mean Twitter kind of just went to the shitter over the years.
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
you can still use it, but just know it takes time to build your community, and a lot of that comes from you experimenting, you finding your people, and then just taking a chance, like making fan art
Mhm.
again, just taking your time making character. Like if you like a certain character, draw that character. If you think of them like somewhat provocative, draw that provocative character. Like
Yeah.
draw them provocatively.
Oh,
Again,
Mhm.
on this subject matter, I just want to attest to this and back up your point for fan art. This
Mhm.
week, I made an animation. It's Blastoise dancing. It's Big Man
yep,
Blastoise.
big
It's
man
very good.
blast.
And
Everybody check it out.
on TikTok, it got 3 million views. On Instagram, it got 1 million views, and everything that I posted afterwards has been getting way more views. And
Yep.
that's the power of fan art. That's the power of making something
Yes.
people can relate to.
That is so true. And that's how you kind of started building your audience. So Derek for starting
Yep.
to do commissions. Nice.
Starting to do commissions, but I also it took time for me to build commissions. Again, I was just drawing like characters and then like suggestions. Like I would just do like draw piles with friends.
Mm.
I would draw characters that I would want to
Mhm.
draw, and then people was like, "Oh, I like how you drew this character. Like, can I pay you to draw a character that I like?"
Yeah.
And it's like, "Sure, go from there."
Was it people hitting you up, or did you make like a commission sheet and put it out there in the
I
world?
used to make it. Yep, make a commission sheet, put it out into the world, and people will constantly hit me up, and they was like, "Hey, like your work, can we do some stuff together?" And
Yeah.
just go from there. It's
Can we talk about how
well,
you like at least at the beginning how you thought about how you price commissions? Because a lot of the times people will do like something for a sketch, a different price for lines, whatever. Did you have a pricing system? I'm just curious.
yep. Yep, I had a pricing system. So again, like back in the day, I would have like sketch commissions, I would have like clean commissions, colored, rendered, all that stuff. So I used to sell my stuff like pretty cheaply.
Hmm.
And that's like when my soon to be friend, he looked at my commission prices and he was like, dude, he was like, why are you like, he was like, why are you selling yourself cheap out here?
Yeah, yeah.
And I was like, what you mean? He was like, bro, he was like, your sketch work is good. He was like, so why are you selling yourself for like $10 a sketch, $15 a sketch?
Yeah.
He was like, and then he's like, you putting too much things on your commissions. He was like, keep it limited to two.
Hmm.
And then he was like, once he started improving, he was like, that's when you start fixing your prices because he was like, you have been honing and mastering your craft.
Hmm.
And he was like,
Right.
you need to get the commission. And he was like, you need to be able to think like what you were worth. So I've done that over the years, and then even now, like after working in the industry for a bit, like I've had people hit me up and they was like, "I want a commission from you." I was like, "Well, here are my prices." And a lot of times, like I have people be like, "Well, I can't really pay that. I thought that you might go back to your old ways or something." I was like, "No." I was like, if I put in the time and craft to learn and master my stuff, I'm gonna get my worth out of it because again, even though that I'm doing a service, I value my time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's good.
And that's what a lot of artists need to understand, because again, go ahead.
No. I was just gonna say, can you give not your first prices and not your prices now, but the prices that you updated to, just so people can get, if someone's like, I'm doing commissions for the first time, can you just give like something that you think is fair?
So yeah, I'm about to say, like, so a monochromatic sketch from me, I would say, like, my Medusa, like, half shot that I did, like, a few years ago, I was charging people around at that time, like, $65-$75 for that.
Fair.
Nice.
For a monochromatic sketch like that. And I've had people, like, just line up and they was like, I want this character, I want that character. Can I have two characters in one? And so forth. And people would be paying my prices. I'm just like, I'm not going down. If I feel as though that I need to go down to meet somebody, and again, like, I have done this before, because again, like, I understand what it means to be broke, and somebody actually taking their time and they working hard, and it was like, I just don't have enough. Like, I really want to commission you. I was like, how much do you have? And they'd be like, I'm working like with $80 or something. Like, I can only like splurge $80. I was like, I do for 60.
Oh, sweet.
Nice.
Because again, it's one of those things, because even though that I might undersell myself at times, it's just like, sometimes if I can, like, if it's in my realm of possibilities, I'd be like, fuck it, come on. Like,
you can also, I think it's possible to temper yourself and say, okay, I'm gonna give $60 worth for this drawing. I might not do like all the, like, I might not zoom in and make absolutely everything perfect necessarily, but I'm gonna give them a drawing still, and they'll like it.
Yeah, I'm about to say, and this was like a returning commissioner too. It was like, he was a repeat commissioner from me, and I was just like,
yeah.
I was like, man, like, he was like, I know your normal prices are like this, but I just ain't got enough right now. I was like, hey man, you commissioned me enough in the past. You helped me out some tough spots. I'll do it.
Oh, that's sweet. Yeah, I do think that's something also to kind of because you're like a small business, so that part of it kind of comes into play, where like return customer and like kind of like the relationship that they build with your quote unquote brand, I guess, or your business comes into play and is important. So cool. I I want to ask you also a little bit. So we've touched on it briefly throughout the episode, but you have never moved to LA to work in animation.
Nope.
Can you tell us a little bit about that? And especially because the reason why I want to kind of bring it up is that that's the advice that we always hear, like move to LA to network, blah blah blah. But you managed to make it work without ever going to LA. So I think
this was
that's
before the quarantine that you started this way.
So again, like with everybody else, if you've been keeping track, the only time that I've worked in office was my internship, and that was back in 2019 before the pandemic. But yeah, like working with Titmouse, Disney, A24, Cartoon Network, and even like my Japanese projects, I've completely remote, absolute remote. So I kind of got lucky, because when I got in, it was during the pandemic and everybody was still doing work from home, and a lot of people still wasn't like coming back to the office, especially like back in 2021 and 2022. Like, people were still up for grabs of saying like, hey, you can still work from home, you don't have to worry about coming into the office again, just building up off of that. So I really had no problem with that, and then just being able to work on my productions, it was pretty all right. So working from home has a lot of challenges, but it's kind of the challenges to where, again, like, you do feel like you're very like excommunicated, like, from everybody. Again, kind of like one of my problems that I'm facing right now, actually, because like with the current state of the industry, I kind of just feel like the outlier right now. It's just like, man, it's like, I kind of did all this work, but nobody really knows me, and I don't really think I'm gonna get work again until I move to California. Especially like after the pandemic, and then like everybody else is trying to go back to the office. I was like, oh, okay, it seems like I do have to go to Cali.
I think everyone's feeling the same way, though.
Yeah,
I think I feel like that too.
It's something that we haven't really brought up as much in the recent episodes, because I think we were trying to kind of keep it a little bit cheery, just so that everybody listening to the podcast doesn't feel like a deep sense of dread. But the industry has been slow ever since 2023. And people in the industry have been saying survive until 2025 has been kind of the saying. And now it is looking like, because we're like all waiting for like the contract to be ratified. We were waiting for the election to shake out because, depending on the president and the policies, that impacts the economy directly. So that's also one of the things that studios were waiting on. So now that both of these things have gone through, now it's all like everyone's like, where are the shows? But it's taking a little bit because now the studios are like, okay, we can finally start thinking about green lighting stuff. So I just wanted to say that also for the audience, and just so that like so everyone's still kind of waiting. And it's still going to be like probably
and there's obviously the fires that have been happening, and so there's like a weird sense of like it, I think that LA for the time being is probably still going to be the center of animation, but I mean at the end of the day there's so many people working remotely that it's becoming harder and harder to say that like yes. Everything has to be, you have to move here to make do.
And especially since that, like, you've successfully networked online, and not to invalidate what you were just saying, I right. do think like the community aspect of it is probably the hardest part. Like, definitely that's why a lot of people say that LA is a great place to be, is that you can just hang out with everybody just so easily.
Do you have anything that you do to compensate for the fact that you're not here? Do you have like Discords that you join? Like, how do you approach making animation friends?
Actually, Discord. I've been using Discord for years. I remember when Discord first came out back in 2016, and I was basically like, screw Skype, we're going to Discord. So that's kind of like where I built like my community, but also just having like my own server. It's kind of like that melting pot. It's I have like a server of like industry artists, like with art mutuals that I had like over the years, safe for work, not safe for work artists. Like we all come together, like we talk, we chat, we build off one another, and I've just been able to have that for like the past few years, and that's actually what kind of like kept me sane. But also getting the chances like to go to LA like for for Lightbox and just being able to see everybody, because I don't remember like like back in what was it? I think like 22 when I was out there. It was like we was grouped up like every day. It was like me, you, Nick, when we was like at the convention.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like when we first met in person, I was like, I just looked at V and I was like, oh my god, I was like, V's tiny.
Height reveal on Creative Block Podcast. V is only 4 foot tall.
Oh my god, that's so funny. Okay, I'm just gonna keep it up in the air just for the funsies, and then people in the comment can like guess my height. But what's so funny is that it's fun because I never considered myself to be small until my family took a picture of me, my dad, my aunt, and my cousin, and they're like all pretty tall. And then I saw the picture and I was like, I guess I'm small. Like, never in my life did I ever think. And then I saw this picture and I was like, oh.
It happens. It happens to the best of us. But yeah, just having like my community and then just being able to like just communicate and just chatting with people like over the years. Hell, like even just finding like common things like the One Piece thread. There's like a lot of industry people, like we all talk about One Piece, like every chapter that comes out, like we have like our deep dive conversations about it. And it's one of those things. It's just like you never know like who you're talking to, but at the same time you never know like who might have your interests in mind. And again, just being able to build up over that over the past few years really is kind of like what kept me sane, because again, working in the Midwest for so long, and then it's like I really don't have like a really existing community here. But I feel like, especially now, especially like after the events that happened in Cali, I'm just like, okay, we got to have a conversation now.
Yes.
Like an absolute conversation, because again, it's just like after recent negotiations and then being able to hear like hearing colleagues like their woes, their fears, and some of their fears came to life and to reality. I'm just like, okay, what are we going to do? And I've talked to a lot of people about this. They're like, what do you mean? I was like, what are we going to do? by saying, does everything need to be hosted in California, or are we allowing to open those borders a little bit more to where people can actually have a little bit more freedom to choose like where they can dwell at? Because again, California, yes, very nice. Like I grew up in Nevada, but some of the things that I would constantly keep hearing, but also now I'm seeing more and more is just like fires, flooding. And I'm not saying that it's perfect anywhere else, but it's just like
all the biblical plagues are happening to California.
let them have the freedom to pick where they can dwell, but also achieve the work that you want. Like we've shown that we can do this before, and I think we should encourage that more. Now, don't get me wrong. I was like, yes, the communities that are fostered in California, but I think we should start opening that horizon a little bit more, especially people lost their homes even like before the fires. Like people were losing their homes because they haven't been able to find work for the past 2 to 3 years. And then it's just like, okay, how much longer are you going to give them hope to find like for opportunities to come back again? And then if you cannot give me that estimate or that number, then we need to start having these serious conversations about expanding and not being discriminatory towards those who choose not to be in this city.
I agree. That's been something that I've been thinking about a lot. I think about moving out of LA a lot just because it's so expensive. If anybody listening is thinking about moving to LA, I would probably say think about it just be a little bit more, because post fires, all of the rent prices are increasing like crazy. I'm not sure it's the best financial decision to make now. I think maybe being in LA can be good for a couple of weeks, and you just fly in, and like for like maybe a couple of weeks you get an Airbnb or something, or you crash on some friends' couches or something. But and if you can organize a bunch of like, I don't know, meetings with different execs that somehow you've connected with on LinkedIn or whatever. But I feel like LA, I don't know.
it is weird because you'd think that the prices would go down because you're living near in a fire zone. You'd think if a house is haunted, the price is lower. But if there's burnt, destroyed land and forest fires everywhere, they're like, okay, it's going up. It's worth more somehow.
Well, that's the thing. It's the unfortunate thing. It's kind of our fault at a sense, because not just saying like the industry right now, it's always been our fault. Everybody was out there and saying like, if you move to California, it's like golden opportunities. Like if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. If you can go to Hollywood, you can become somebody. It's that illusion of where like a lot of people think that they have to be in these certain cities to either make it big or being a celebrity or being somewhat successful. And it's just like, no, success is what you make of it. Success is how you find it. You don't have to be in a city to find success. Success finds you, especially in today's society. It's you can do whatever the heck you want and you could become successful.
Yeah, that's true.
Talking about that you can like work for anybody from anywhere, pretty much. You work in anime now, and how did that opportunity come about? How did you get these jobs?
Okay, so that actually came from somebody that was an intern. So, Kins, you're going to be mad at me, but I'm gonna name drop you. So, forgive me. Yeah, so a good friend of mine, Kinsey, she was actually an intern over at Disney when I was working on Moon Girl. And when she, again, like at the time, they used to reach out to me, and I would help them out from here and there. And some life stuff came up, and I really helped them through it, like just giving like some words of encouragement, and then just being able to just check in on them because again, that's my friend. And just over the time, and I just seen like the artists that they've worked to become, they started getting into anime, and they was like, hey, it was like just last year because I was working more retail, so I started as a manager over at Michael's, quit that because that's a story. And then I started working over at Best Buy, and then she was like, hey, so there's an opportunity coming up, and she was like, I remember you said that you want to get into anime. She was like, do you want to get into anime? And I kind of just jumped to the gun. I was like, fudge yeah, let's go. Like absolutely. Like what do I have to do? So they kind of just like showed me the ropes of like how to do proper layout animation and just being comfortable with Clip Studio because again, that's what they all do their work is in Clip Studio.
Mm.
And just being able to like take my time, work on that. She was like, "Hey, okay, I submitted your work as a group, like so you can work with us for a project that like your work. I'm gonna give you like 2 to 3 cuts.
Mhm.
So you're gonna work on this, and we're gonna work on this side by side, and I'm gonna let you like spread your wings a little bit." So after I completed that assignment, I was just like, well, I want to continue to keep doing more work with her, but I was like, I have to venture out, like learn like how to actually network and animate for a bit. So I asked him for advice, and this goes for anybody that is looking to like work in anime. Make sure that you actually have like a good portfolio because American style portfolios will not work sometimes with Japanese productions.
Mhm.
And yeah, that was kind of like some of the roadblocks that I was faced with. But I also had like two PAs. They was like, we need some layout people. They was like, you got some good drawings. We're willing to give you a chance. Can you do some cuts for us?
Can you go real
And
quick before we go too far
yeah,
past this? Can you go into just a little bit of the differences in between portfolios?
yeah, absolutely. So, like when it comes to Americanized portfolios, so I remember getting hit with this one time and I was kind of like, what do you mean by that? So they actually explained it to me. They was like, well, your portfolio is good. It was like, we're not saying that it's not good. They was like, but it's American. It was like you lead with your characters on your storyboarding stuff, but you don't really have like an animation reel. Like you're not showing us like you know how to do a cut timing, like you understand like how to read a timesheet or make a timesheet. And that's something where like I had to learn. And
Mm.
in the beginning, I didn't really know how to do proper timing because I was overthinking it. And then when I was like, oh, timing is just like what we do here in America, but we're not really doing it more to audio. We're just doing it like just like the old way. Like we're basically timing it out but feeling it. So
Mhm.
when I started applying like my storyboarding techniques to my animation, that's where everything started like coming together in harmony. And then I started getting like a little bit more confident in my drawings because I was like, okay, like let me understand like how to draw the characters a little bit more, go further into detail, like what's too much, what's too less. And again, just asking the PAs like, hey, can you pass this off to the director real quick? And submitting it back. So
Mhm.
like in my portfolio now, like I do have like again my typical one, but now I also have like my animation like NDA section where you can go through it, you can start finding like different cuts, like breaking it down from the storyboards to like how I like deliver the cut and everything else, and we just go from there. And then I've also had like, a lot of PAs that was like, okay, like this is a better portfolio.
Mhm.
Thanks.
And if we can talk a little bit about money, if that's okay. Working in anime, is it more of something that like is a feather in your cap, or can you use some of that money to like pay expenses? I say that because you said that you quit a job at Best Buy for it, right?
Oh no no, I quit my job at Michael's, and then so funny enough. So the day I quit over at Michael's, I went over to Best Buy, talked to the manager, and the manager liked like how I was coming off, and he was like, "Hey," he was like, "We got some applications online, fill it out." Went home, did that. 2 days later, we got an interview. So I was just like, "Wow," hasn't been out of work for like less than a week. Got another job real quick. So
Mhm.
So you were working both?
yeah. So as of now, like I'm doing like my Best Buy job, and I'm working anime because
Mhm.
so anime. So working anime. So can you use the money? I would say yes, but that's if you already have like prior existing income.
Mhm.
So anime does not really pay well.
Mhm.
Certain shots. So again, like if you're working on a cut, you might get paid from a range of like 2,000 yen to something up to like 6,000 yen. So when you transfer that over to American USD, so if you know what a cut is, basically it's like a brief cut of animation. You're basically getting paid either from $19 to up to $35
Okay.
for a cut.
And
So,
how many hours do you usually spend on a cut?
oh God, you could spend multiple hours. You could spend a day on a cut
Mm-hmm.
if
Mm-hmm.
it's that extensive, like that intensive.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're doing like less par work, I've seen people like turn in like just freaking scratch lines, and I'm just like, that's not good layout. Because
Yeah.
you're going to give this to the director, and the director has to do a lot of heavy lifting.
Mm-hmm.
And again, you're just adding more work to the people later in the pipeline.
Mm-hmm.
And that actually goes into what I started learning a lot more with animating, because I was just like, oh, we have a fucking crisis
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to American storyboarding and
Mm-hmm.
animating compared to overseas storyboarding and animating. Now, don't get me wrong, I love to be able to storyboard over here. Like I love storyboarding. But after working anime, I've started figuring out like, oh, there has to be a better way of like making something that's much more bearable, because again, when I was submitting work to Japanese studios, they was looking at my storyboards and it was like, are these storyboards or are these like key animations? I was like, these are storyboards. They was like, why do you guys over animate your storyboards?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And then once
Yeah.
I started working anime, I was like, oh, we do over animate our stuff so much. And you can't help but feel like there's a lot more
Yeah.
things that are just like, yeah, it's there has to be a better there has to be a better
Well,
solution
our
than
whole
we've been doing.
pipeline has become set up to be the front end, quote unquote, heavy lifting is done in storyboards, and then it's prepared in a way so that it could be sent overseas, and then
Yep.
you won't have to communicate as much to explain things. But it's harder with the language difference if you leave a lot up to interpretation, right?
No, absolutely. And then I'm just like, I feel as though like you take a lot away from the animators, because I know an
Yeah.
animator, they can make a scene look pretty, but I think you should let an animator have their moment, and then being able to think like, okay, like how should this theme be, and you should be able to work with them. And I understand, and this is actually what I really think of. I was like, yo, I really think of American animation wants to become a thriving pillar again, because
Mm-hmm.
if I'm being completely honest, I was like, man, like when you look at American animation, I'm just like, when you got international films, like when you got France, Italy, Japan, China's coming up like with their animation scenes, and I'm just like, America, I need you to really understand this pipeline. Instead of like sending a lot of our work overseas, we got to start building this communication
Yeah.
system back again. I was like, a lot
Mm-hmm.
of like in-house productions need to start coming back. I was like, either for storyboarding, I was like, either you make a layout department or you bring a few teams of like in-house animators.
Yeah, that's something that not to go into too many details about this, but it's something that I have been trying to talk with some producers about, and they're not against the idea of having a mini small animation in-house team, but you gotta find a way to cut the budget somewhere else. So it's that thing where it's like right now, the way the budgets are done in American animation is it's very design heavy. And so the budgets aren't gonna budge. And so you need to figure out who
Yeah,
in
yeah.
your team do you like push aside to make room for the animators. That's kind of a and it's kind of a hard question because there's not really any shows. I mean, and it depends on the budget, I guess. I know Owl House had Spencer Wan as an animation director, so it's not entirely impossible, but Disney shows are known to have a much higher budget than.
Like I know my show back over at A24, Number One Happy Family USA, we actually had a layout department, and that's what I was working on.
Oh,
And we
wow.
actually, yeah, so we actually redrew over the storyboards, and we made sure like every character was on model, and then like we added additional animation to them, like additional acting passes,
Mm-hmm.
expression passes, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And we also had like an in-house animation team, and
Mm-hmm.
anybody that worked on that project with me, you remember those days. That's all I gotta say. You remember those days.
Mm-hmm. I also wanted to highlight real fast that I think it's really cool that you hold your job at Best Buy and you also work in anime. I do
Yeah.
think that is inspiring also because a lot of people think, well, once I've had my animation job, I can't go back. I can't take
Yeah, it's
another
like
job.
quitting. It's like giving up if I go back to another job.
But I don't think that's true. And I mean, what's
No.
your take on that?
I didn't mean to interrupt you on this one, because this is a conversation. This is like a topic where I feel very strongly about.
Mm-hmm.
So because you're not the first person I ever heard that from, or being like, well, or like again, like just like reiterating like a take from somebody else being like, well, I just feel like I quit, like it feels like I'm quitting art, or like I would rather die than work a normal job if it's not art. And I'm just like, whenever I see stuff like that, I'm like, bro, I was like, who dubbed you the great fucking baby Jesus? I was like, at the end of the day, I was like, I will never knock a person for actually able to go out there and get a job to able to handle their responsibilities. Because if at the end of the day, everybody got responsibilities. Responsibilities just can't be ignored. So for you to actually go out there and get you a job, a normal 9 to 5, or you have to work retail, you have to work fast food. I don't give a damn where you work at. If you're working while doing something else and you're still making like some type of income so you can survive, bro, you have my utmost respect. I don't give a damn what you do, because I had a mom that had to work 2 to 3 jobs raising 2 kids in Vegas. I saw that. And then knowing that I had to live through that, but also knowing that I can't give up, I can't quit, because I was instilled with that work ethic. It was just like I just can't keep sitting on my ass. Like even like on my day off, it's like if I'm not working Best Buy, it's like, oh, what's he do? I'm working anime job.
Sure.
Again, it's constantly keeping you busy, because at the end of the day, it's just like, yo, I can't keep waiting for somebody to give me another handout or another opportunity. And I would love to be able to say like I'm over here knocking at the doors for like the American studios, like, let me in, let me in, let me in. Like I'm almost like banging on the door like Fred Flintstone at the ending of like Wilma. Like
Yeah.
like that's me. Like I want to be back in the studios, but also working anime, it's again, it's another portfolio builder for me. It's allowing me to learn, it's allowing me to see the other side of the pipeline, because as a storyboard artist, I never used to think about animators at times. Like sometimes I did, but a lot of times I was just told like, don't think about the animators, because if you do, you might tend to like overthink your shot, or you might try to simplify your shot, and give like a piss poor result. And yeah, I'm just like, yeah, working on this side, there's a lot of things that needs to be fixed upon. There's a lot of things I think going forward. Storyboard artists, you need to be like, you need to be an animator. Animators, you need to be storyboard artists. You need to understand both sides of the aisle so that we can actually come to a healthier place in this pipeline. But also going back to, if you have to get you a normal day job, I ain't mad at you. You gotta survive. Get you a job. If you gotta get some money in your damn bank account, get you that money. Whoever tries to shoot you down saying like, oh well, I didn't have to quit art because I knew things were going to work out. Well, that doesn't work for everybody. Everybody can't be everybody's fucking favorite to get on another project. I'm sorry. Like this actually gets me kind of fed up at times, because it's that conversation.
Yeah, I think it's good to hear that too. I think it's good to hear it just because there is a certain type of discourse online, and it's good to have a different point of views on it. I also think I personally think like, whatever you need to do so you can keep living, and just kind of like how in the Will Cursula interview, he was bartending 2 days a week while he was like trying to write. And I think that's inspiring. And because these jobs are few and far between, and it's a little bit akin to being an actor sometimes. I feel that's kind of what I realized recently. How like when you're in LA and you talk a little bit to like the barista or like the waiter or whatever, and they're like, oh yeah, I'm like an actor, and you're like, oh yeah, so you're like constantly auditioning in the same way that when you're in animation you're constantly testing and etc.
No, absolutely. Like I just had that happen at my job over at Best Buy. Like my coworkers, because like when they saw that I can actually draw, they was like, "Whoa!" They was like, "You can draw?" I was like, "Yeah." I was like, I worked for Disney. Like I worked for Cartoon Network. Like I've done this before." And they'd be like, "What are you doing here?" I was like, "For the industry to get its fucking act together." Honestly.
Yeah.
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 For the industry to get its act together, but at the same time, I'm like, after working retail again, I was like, I might keep my job even as like a seasonal thing, because I was like, first off, I'm gonna abuse the shit out of those damn employee discounts.
Yeah.
I really like my employee discount. I'm gonna abuse the shit out of them.
Yes.
Absolutely taking advantage of that.
Are you getting also are you getting like health benefits and stuff?
Oh God, I wish.
Just asking.
Again,
Just
yeah,
wondering.
no, yeah, I wish, and it's again, it's like his own bag.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something where like I had to like come to deal with, but at the same time, it's like if I was able to get in before, I'm able to get back in again. I just have to bide my time.
Yeah.
And during this time, like again, like during like my downtime, I know like a lot of people was like, because I've had people like be like, I don't think I could do what you're doing. And I was like, what do you mean? They was like, you're working retail, you're working anime, like how do you do it? And I'm just like, motherfucker, I have to wake up every day. Every day I wake up, I have to do it.
Yeah.
Because if I didn't, nobody else would be able to do it for me. Or I can't expect somebody to come. I can't expect a knight in shiny armor, or I can't expect me to find a Saudi prince or a Dubai prince somewhere because good Lord knows we about to have a hell of a time if I could otherwise. It's just one of those things. It's kind of like I already had that conversation with myself. I was like, I know what I'm gonna do for my life, and I think if I did not pursue it, it would be disservice to those who supported me so far into my journey in life that
Mm-hmm.
are no longer here with me, that encouraged me to be the person that I wanted to be, and I just didn't live up to that expectation
Mm-hmm.
that I put for myself. Because I don't like to consider myself like religious. I consider myself to be more faithful, like open minded, like maybe there is a higher power. But I kind of like have this vague idea of like when my time comes that the people that was there with me on my journey will be on the other side, and I can just tell them my story.
That's really
And
sweet. I really
I
like
want
that.
them, and I just want them to know like, hey, you believed in me so much that I was able
Yeah.
to go the distance.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's great.
I wanted to ask in lieu of the approaching Black History Month, I wanted to ask, as somebody who's worked on a few productions that have Black protagonists, I just wanted to ask, how important is it for you to see protagonists that look like you in productions that you watch and ones that you work on?
Oh, okay. I had to just take a deep breath on this one.
I hope that's an okay thing for me to ask,
It's
you know?
no, absolutely is an okay thing to ask, because this is a question that I have seen so much on social media. I have seen people's left, I have seen people's right takes. I have seen takes that I question my own, being like, I can't believe I'm actually in the same presence of a person that actually had this thought.
For sure.
But when it comes to having characters that look like me, that are based around like my upbringing, I think that we can do better. It's now again, it's almost like how we went in for like adult animations. Like
Sure.
that's another topic, but going back onto the PLC, it's I want better representation of, again, like when I see a black character on the screen, I just don't want a black character that's they're just there because they're trying to hit like a demographic, or they're just trying to check
Sure.
box something. Like I want it to be something like actual meaning. Like I don't want a black character that's the just like scholastic nerd. I don't want a one that is like basketball or football life jarhead. I don't want the one that's like I'm from the streets, so I gotta be from the streets. Like, no, I want an actual character that actually pushes the narrative of a thought conversation. Like, I want characters that can actually engage a conversation. Like, I want characters that are like Virgil from like Static Shock, because again, that's actually like one of my biggest inspirations. Like,
Yeah.
I want to make like a Saturday morning cartoon because again, somebody that hardly grew up on cable. Like I grew up on like free station network. I grew up on Kids WB, Foxbox, all that stuff. I want to see characters that look like me, but also can like rip my story, my background. And a lot of characters just can't do that. Like I want characters that are like more intrigued to them. Like I want characters that have like complex narratives about them. Like I want characters that are able to push that conversation. Like Virgil was one of those characters. Like we haven't had a character like Virgil since like freaking Miles.
Mm-hmm.
And like when you look at the dial, it's like yeah, you had like some really good characters like in between. It's why like I love Craig of the Creek so damn much. Like that was one of my
Hell yeah.
favorite shows in college. Like I'm happy to say like I got to work on a freaking spin-off of Craig of the Creek with Jessica that's in the same universe as Craig of the Creek, because I love those characters so much.
So cool.
Reason why I gravitated towards Moon Girl is because when I saw Lunella, I saw my little cousin. I saw my niece, and I was like, yo, this is for them. Like, I want to work on this character because she's quirky, she's insecure at times, she's awkward, she's a goober at heart, and I love her. And I was like, that's my little cousin, that's my niece. They need this. I wasn't able to have those characters in my life when I started. Like, I didn't have a lot of them now. Like, there's so many like complex characters that you can get that aren't mainstream that's actually in fiction, like novels. And we're just not able to get them in the mainstream because a lot of people aren't ready to have those conversations because we're still arguing about what our grand ancestors, like, again, like what grandpappy did back in the freaking 40s and 50s. And we're not ready to admit those wrongs and trying to bring those to rights.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's like I want those conversations. Like, I want these characters to exist, but I want them to be for the right reason, not for the wrong reason, but for the right reason.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
And if you can't sell me on a character for being black for the right reasons, I don't want it. I will be the first person. Like, if you're just giving me a character just to have a black character, I don't want it. I want something that has like like, if you're giving me a character and you're selling me a character, what is to this character? I want to know the personality. I want to know what the insecurities. I want to know what the character's flaws. I want to know the character's hopes, dreams, ambitions. I want to know them first before the skin color.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you tell me that skin color is black and there's nothing to that character, bro, you just gave me a freaking a participation trophy at this point. A
Yeah.
hollow victory.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. I think that's like something that I've seen a lot also for around the discussion for Primos. That was also something that I kind of felt from the community, like that they felt like, oh, they're just giving us a show, even though it was like the Latinist community. They were like, oh, it looks like you're just kind of like giving us the characters and not really like the actual story, like for the participation trophy. I think that's like a really great way of putting it.
And I'm not here to try to step on people's toes. Like, if they listen
Mhm.
to the podcast, I hope this is able to enact like a conversation. Like,
Mhm.
if you feel like the other side of the aisle from me on this conversation when this episode drops, hey, if you find this episode, feel free to hit me up on social media. Like, I'm down to have a conversation. Like, don't think I'm not going to back down from a conversation, because one thing about me that I grew up with in the family is being a strong debater. Like,
You got
if you bring
opinions.
if you bring your case, I'm gonna hear you out. Absolutely, I'm gonna hear you out. But you better bring your freaking A game. But again, it also goes back to like adult animation. Like, I really think like America, again, like sometimes like we can have like some really genuine moments for adult animations, but a lot of times we still get stuck in the past of like, we gotta do poo poo jokes. Like, no, like, let us tell these intricate stories. Like, let us make these characters. Like, I understand that we're making product, and I hate that we have to use that coin for animation, because animation shouldn't be seen as a product. It should be seen as a freaking art form, as it is. It's not
Mhm.
just for kids, it's for everybody, you motherfuckers. It's for everybody.
Yeah, if you're listening, you
Mhm.
motherfuckers.
It's animation's for everybody, motherfuckers. Like, I'm about to be like Miyazaki right now. Like, animation's for everybody, motherfuckers. Quoted by Derrick. But no, it's like with adult animation, like, again, like we was talking about, like, not safe for work. The
Mhm.
background of that one, I was like, I look at Japan. Japan's pretty bold with their shit. Like, I'm just like,
Mhm.
yo, you see like a AAA studio, it can be like a well-known studio, and they have like a freaking side team, and they're making like H content. I'm like, hey, yo, is
You
that
know,
content good though?
that's really funny that you bring that up because the smalls that I'm doing for Adult Swim, they're called High Moon Queen, and it's very like it's super raunchy. Because I don't know, I think it's funny. It's kind of inspired also in some way by like Japanese staples like Ebichu or like Cutie Honey, I guess, is also a
Oh my
little bit in that
god.
realm. And it's funny because we get, even though it's Adult Swim and it's super adult, like we get a lot of notes around that, around like, like
You
he
can't show
can't
the dildo or like
can't
or
show the
whatever.
dildo. No, but it can't look like a penis too much. Like you
Yeah,
can't show the
that
pubes, no pubes.
and that
Uh,
kills me. Like, it's just like it, and see, that just fucking kills me too, because it's the freaking autonomy of like actual anatomy, and then it's just like everyday existence. It's like, so what, you're gonna censor IRL? You're
yeah.
gonna censor life? So that's where I'm kind of like at. again, like when it comes to adult animation, it's not the shit on adult animation because I know we can get to that point, but it's just I think we need to allow the artists to start expressing themselves, but also start showing their inspirations.
Hmm.
I I'm just like, man, like you're starting to see like some amazing stuff out here that you might deem H content, but actually I was like some of the best story to it. And people
Hmm.
like, you watch that stuff? I was like, if it got a good story, hell yeah.
Hmm.
I will sit back and I will watch it. I have sat down with friends and we just watched it and we was like, yo, that was actually a good episode. Absolutely. It would just be like, yo, this some great animations, great stories, great complex designs. Like I'm all here for it. Or just even having like those conversations. And I think that is something where we need to start getting to that point rather than bastardizing it. It's something where like we need to start having like a healthier approach to it because we can start exploring so much more with these characters and it doesn't have to be for sex. No, you
Hmm.
can start having those intricate storytelling. Like we can start having like those more deeper conversations that should be had, but either we're afraid to have those conversations. Like we're afraid to actually have villains be
Hmm.
villains.
That's true.
Like
That's something that
we're
I've noticed too.
afraid
Hmm.
like we're afraid to have villains to be villains, and we're afraid to actually show a character getting murked off to kids. It's like, where was this thought process when we were growing up? Hell, it's like why most millennials are freaking latchkey kids.
That's something that I also think is the reason why indie animation does so well because it doesn't, I mean, does so well. No, I mean, you have some breakout hits because there's not all of these, what should we call it, like rules or like guardrails that you have to abide to when you're working with a studio. We have a lot of questions from Blue Sky, which is super exciting. I want to get into some of them.
Absolutely.
Oh, this one's really fun from at SMH Art. Oh, shaking my head hard in art. I guess that's what the username is. When storyboarding scenes where there's crowds in the background, how detailed do they usually have to be? Do they have to look fully detailed, or are they just blobs or faces or stick figures kind of characters?
It kind of matters onto the show, especially if the show is being sent overseas. You better draw those characters. If it was something like that's done more in house, I think like the only studio that I've seen that have done this is Titmouse. Especially like I can say prior examples are like Ball Masters.
Hmm.
If you go back like hell, you can go on you can go on YouTube, you can actually find like an animatic path of Ball Masters, and you can see like how lucid they was afforded to be because again the animation was done in house, so they allowed it. So I said allowed it. It allowed the animators to be able to talk to the board artists and see like what they was actually trying to go for in that scene, and communication was there. So it
Hmm.
just kind of varies from like project to project. But what I tell artists is I say keep it to the bare necessities. Keep it to where if you're trying to show me a building, it conveys a building. If it conveys like a classroom setting, it conveys a classroom setting. It doesn't have to like be too detailed. Like I don't want to see like the freaking scratch board in the desk, like unless like the detail asks for it. But don't spend so much on the backgrounds because you're not a background artist. If anything, learn 3D, learn how to make like 3D asset props, and then just put it up. Like again, I learned that with A24 with Number One Happy Family USA. We used to use 3D backgrounds all the time. It helped us out so much more.
Yeah, 3D backgrounds are like rising in popularity a lot. At Boy Skylark on Blue Sky asks, when you're working on a storyboard, how much movement is too much? I have a tendency to add too much movement boarding on rough animation for my boards, and I've not found any advice on this issue. So, how much is too much for a storyboard?
Okay, well, because
This is a
this is
hard
also
one.
something that this is
Mhm.
a hard one because I've seen like actual like student animations where they're giving like they're just like over animating.
Yeah.
I'm
Mhm.
like, yo, like why are you over animating this character? Like why is he moving like well, I say his dialogue? And it comes back to the point of even like when it comes to storyboarding, do you know how to act? And
Mhm.
this is a conversation that I've had with a lot of students and they look at me freaking dumbfounded. I was like, do you know how to act? And they are like, I'm not an actor, I'm an artist. No, you have to be both. As a storyboard artist, we can all attest to this, even as an animator. You are a director, you are a producer, you are an actor, you are an artist. You have to understand that character. You have to get into the character mindset to set any scene. And this is where it comes to having like good film study. Another thing I actually recommend to students is watching the behind the scenes featurettes of acting, because I think like one of my favorite ones is from the Hobbit trilogy with Benedict Cumberbatch when he is in the freaking motion capture suit for Smaug. For oh my god, I'm butchering that dragon's name, and then like every Lord of the Ring fan is gonna be like, heretic,
Yeah,
heretic.
it's Smaug, and it's in the Hobbit.
Yeah. So like with Smaug, it's one of those things. It's like, yo, when you're looking and conveying, like when you're watching his performance, you're seeing that he's taking time, but he's also getting into the character. Like when you see his movements, like he's like, ooh, underling. Like he's moving around. Like you can see like him like moving like his shoulders. Like he's like trying to get into the mindset. Like he's becoming a dragon, but he's also becoming a dragon as like egotistic. He's getting into the mindset like, I'd never smelled like one of your kind before. Like where, like who are you? And like where do you dwell from? It's He's really getting into that character, and it comes back to boarding, like getting into the mindset of the character, but also understanding the location, because a lot of times we focus so much on the character, like the actual characters, but you also have to visualize the world as a character. And this is what I learned from Moon Girl is New York is a character. It's not a location, it's a character. So to get like that understanding, have to start understanding like where's my camera, where am I going to start shooting like this location, but also how am I going to act
Oh
with
my
these
god!
characters.
I just saw the perfect. I was watching the perfect things to reference for this. There's that scene with the Artful Dodger in Oliver and Company where he's going
Oh,
through
yeah.
New York, but it's like by hopping on cabs, by jumping onto a crane that's moving something, by hopping onto a piano, and they're moving through the city in a way that the city is as much of a character as they are.
Absolutely. And that's what people got to start understanding more, because again, they were just like, well, I got to draw a background. No, you're drawing another character. You got to be within the character. So again, like if you're thinking about like a character conversation, imagine if you was there, but don't
Yeah.
overact it. Let it be natural. Like let it just come off natural. And we just tend to overthink it because everybody's trying to be like the next big thing, because, and this is kind of again our fault a little bit, because we should have been saying no rather than over animating or some of our boards and some of our works, because like when people start seeing that stuff, they're like, oh, my stuff got to look like that or I'm never going to have a chance.
You know, it's really funny that you bring that up because it is sometimes, I think also sometimes some people have a really hard time paring down the work when sometimes asking like an artist, hey, just do 5 drawings for this animation. Sometimes they can't help but want to do like 12 or something, and it's like,
Yeah.
no, it looks great, but no,
but you see the same thing. You see the same thing in illustration sometimes too, where if someone is insecure about how good their pose is, they'll put a million details on it to try to compensate for it. And sometimes it's the same for animation a little bit. And you can show your hand sometimes by doing if you do too many poses, then you have all these poses, you have all these other poses that could be under scrutiny. And what if you're not as good at doing that, but you could have passed off your stuff, if you made 5 drawings instead, and they would have been fine. It's more chances for them to be like, this scene feels wrong almost.
I also think, and it's something that I haven't heard talked about a lot in the podcast, but I've heard from multiple productions and or editors that when they get boards that are over animated, sometimes it makes their work harder because they have to cut out all the drawings that they can't put in the animatic.
Exactly.
So, overall, I would like, for me, like just my personal way of doing boards and how many poses I put in the boards, I just put in the keyframes. Not even the breakdowns. Depending on the show, sometimes I'll do a breakdown, but usually just the keyframes. And depending on the show, sometimes you'll do like the overshoot and the settle. But my rule of thumbs is only the keyframes.
Also, is the KISS method: keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's one of those things. It's one of those things to where like a lot of professionals like we have to keep telling ourselves keep it simple, stupid. Because again, it's just like how you're saying like we just tend to overthink it and we tend to overdo it. And again, we should be looking at like just thinking of like just drawing like just key animations,
Mhm.
like keep it keep as keys. But if you just
Yeah.
need to have like a subtle overshoot like here and there, that's perfectly fine.
Mhm.
But your thing shouldn't be like over animated, like woo, like whoop de doo, like I'm Alakazam, like I gotta
Mhm.
move like my fingers and like everything else, and it's like no, like
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's how you start to get muddy and you start to lose your stuff, and it's like I hate name dropping and I'm not trying to show any shade, but everybody's trying to be like
Mhm.
Kevin Molino like with his boards because. I'm sorry. Also, another hot take. Those aren't storyboards at this point in time. Those are freaking Sakuga. Somebody that works in anime. Those are Sakugas. Again, everybody wants to be like Kevin, and I'm just like, look, everybody can't be Kevin. Kevin's Kevin. Be
Yeah.
your own artist.
Hmm. I agree. I think like it's funny because I saw someone's boards too at Disney and he entirely colors his
Oh my
boards
god.
for no reason for no reason that he just finishes the work a little early and he likes doing it. He just likes coloring the boards. That's what he does. And it's like, listen, if you want to do it, you can, but that is absolutely not the standard. And that's fine to also be a person who's like, to be like, hey, that's not me, and that's
Yeah.
also okay as long as the work is delivered and it does the job.
Yeah, I
Everything.
feel like another
Right.
thing that people have to remember is that all shows have different rules. And so
Hmm.
like I've had some shows where if you want the animators to know that the mouth has to be closed at the end of the shot, then you have to storyboard the mouth closed, then opening, and then closed, even if the character's not moving, which I think is a little bit overkill. um,
Yeah.
but to do that for every shot. But you'll have some productions that feel like that, and then you'll have some productions where you can do completely rough bodies as long as the face is pretty clean. Every show is going to be different and have different rules, and I think it's more about a adaptability and picking,
Mhm.
you know, like when, for instance, when you were trying to storyboard and get on shows as a storyboard artist, were you looking at the types of shows that you wanted to get on and emulating how those boards look, or were you just doing your own thing? How did you approach that?
So for myself, oh God, see, because this is a hard one because the only other show that I actually applied for and that I got on because somebody actually recommended me for the production was Jessica's Biblical World.
Mm.
And I actually had to like de-learn a lot of things from Moon Girl because again, Jessica was an entirely different beast. And again, just my time there compared to my first and second time, I learned drastically. When it came to Moon Girl, I didn't know how to storyboard. I actually learned on the show. And then just being able to like make my own boards, I was kind of like, okay, like what are some things that I really want to do more of? I was like, I know I'm really into conversational pieces, but I also like I'm kind of good at comedy. That's where I kind of like did like my earlier boards of like Doc and Gabby from my old like college project. And then I was like, back in 2023, I was like, huh, let's make that into another board. Like, let's have fun with it.
Mhm.
Now I look back at it, I'm just like, ooh, this is cringe. Like, let me fix upon this because now since I started working anime, but also start, learn a little bit more with storyboarding, I was like, I can actually improve upon this, but also start taking my own advice, like reach out to people, like start, hey, like I need another pair of eyes because maybe I might have like rose tinted glasses. And again, like be open and acceptable, like susceptible to critique.
Mhm.
And I think that's something where like it kind of helped me out like in the long run because projects that I storyboarded to get on, yeah, the only one that I really did that was yeah, it was literally Jessica. That was it. Like everything else, I started as a revisionist from Harriet the Spy. Like I did the test with that one, and funny enough, like I thought that my test was bad, but I remember talking to one of the directors from that show, and it was just like it's kind of spooky, scary that you was like somewhat close to like what was getting in the final piece.
Whoa.
Yeah, I was just like, for shits and giggles, I was like, oh, this is like how I would see the cut. This is like how I would do it. And it was kind of like, you was kind of close, which was kind of scary. And just being able to just go from there.
We almost had to pay you for your test because to give you royalties. Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't knock it. Like, I'd be down for it. But yeah, that was pretty much it. Like, yeah, that's a hard one. Absolutely.
Yeah. No, I get it, and your circumstances is different from that, and it sounds like for you being allowed to take a test allowed you to prove yourself a lot, and I think that in some ways we all have a love-hate relationship with tests because I think tests can give you a way to prove yourself, and then also tests when you're 10 years into the industry can be like, why am I testing for this? Like, what? Oh, like, I have so many things that I've done that are similar. What is wrong with you? Just look at my stuff.
Yeah, I mean, like, if anybody got like a resume, like, if they have like the background and they have like the credentials of saying like, hey, why are you having this person test for this show? And they done something like they done like 5, 6 different shows similar to this. Hire them already. But if it's like somebody like just fresh out of the gate, like how I was, it's like, test me. Sure. I'm not going to deny a test. Like, just test me.
We have a question on Instagram from KC Pants. Any underrated advice you have for potential storyboard artists you wish you learned earlier?
An underrated advice to potential storyboard artists.
Is that just advice you don't hear very much, but something you believe in?
Study animatics. Find animatics. Break them down. Study them.
Nice.
Again, to become a good artist, you got to learn how to steal.
Yeah. What's that book? Steal Like an Artist by yeah, that's a cool book.
Yep, Steal Like an Artist. And again, it's actually how it's how I learned how to storyboard, watching animatics. It was learning how to break down, like how they broke down a scene, but also are building up to a scene, even if they didn't use the scene in the final piece, or if you can find like side-by-sides. Those are really great to learn from because again, you're starting to understand like what went into the actual mindset to get to point A to point Z in completion. Yeah. And I think we tend to overlook that. Like, hell, I love when animated movies or animated shows like in their behind the scenes featurettes. Like, I keep doing this, but I will forever vouch for this. If any show, if you want to make extra money, like I feel like Butters from South Park right now. Like, bitch, don't you want to make some motherfucking money, bitch? Like, you want to make some money? You out here giving out free hugs and kisses. Like, don't you want to make some motherfucking money? No, if it is animated, please, for the love of God, put like an entire act or put an entire episode or something animatic in those behind the scenes. I promise you, I would be buying every one of them. Every single animated movie, every single animated TV show, you start putting behind the scenes features like animatics in them, I'm buying them right off the bat.
I miss behind the scenes. I miss bloopers. That's why, like, anytime I do like a big project on my own, I want to try to do that stuff. I really like behind the scenes things.
It's the best thing ever. That's what I was also trying to go about. Like, again, like going into the question of like learning like how to storyboard, is learning how to act. When you're watching these movies, like watch these actors in their bloopers, but also like watch them get into the mindset of these characters. Like, it is goosebumps like night and day. Like, I encourage this like 24/7. Like, watch that.
That's great. I love that. I just think like a lot of people who buy the art books whenever they're like other animation students or like are other animation professionals, and I don't understand why they're not sharing all of the boards and stuff in these Blu-rays.
Let me tell you, it's one of those things. I buy art books. Anybody that knows me personally, they know I am like Smog with my art books. Like, I hoard thousands of art books for that reason, and it's kind of like why I stopped buying like some art books now recently, because I was like, a lot of them just don't give like juicy behind the scenes anymore. And they're sometimes either cookie cutter or they just put out like the nice stuff. And I'm like, nah, show me the grit. Like, I want to see the grit.
We also have a question on Twitter from Frank Ace underscore art. This is a really cool question. With Moon Girl being short and Devil Dino so big, was it a big of a challenge to find unique or interesting ways to frame them in the same shot?
No, because of that exact example, because of Devil's size and Lunella's. Because again, when you see Lunella, especially like when she's Moon Girl and she's just like flying around Devil, she almost looks like a fly. So she's basically a mosquito to Devil,
Mm.
but it's such like a puppy love relationship. He treats that mosquito with so much love and affection to where it's basically like a puppy. Again, it's just you get like some of the most challenging, yes, but you get like some of the most like unique ways. Again, like when you start like watching like some of the music mixtape moments of the series, I remember like when some of the animatics was still being made, and I just love like the goofy hijinks that we used to put like Devil in them. Like when like Lunella's like switch brains like was Devil, and she's like in his body, and she's like trying to run as a human in Devil's body. I was like, it's freaking hilarious every time I look back at that clip. Like Lunella's like in Devil's body just grunting because like Devil just like smacked like Lunella's body into a car door and just like like you can't know like you can't fly with my body like it's like the funny parallels with each other, like it's hilarious.
That was so cute. And we have from at one cartoon, what was the hardest thing? It can be a scene or character to draw in Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur.
Oh man, the hardest character or one of the hardest things. So that actually goes back to like my earlier statement. Yeah, drawing Devil in like a front face view, that was kind of like a no-no.
Mhm.
I still remember like the handout guide, like the philosophy of like learning like how to draw a devil was basically like overthinking Thanos's like face structure.
Mm.
And that's kind of like where you get devil. Like just think of Thanos as like jaw structure from
Mhm.
like his lower jaw to his upper jaw. And yeah, just like when you think about it, like Devil's design, drawing him like face forward instead of like his 3/4 angle, he always look like it throws me off every time I see him like front shot. Like I just get thrown off.
Would you kind of like avoid drawing him front facing?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Hmm.
Like if we needed it, that's when we would draw it. But
Hmm.
if not, we would be like, no, we can do 3/4.
Yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Let's see. I think we can close the questions with this question from our patron Puzzle Glum. What are the subtle or or most interesting differences between working on anime and Western animation?
Ooh, my favorite. So the biggest difference between working on anime and Western animation. So Western animation, you are given much more time than what you would on an anime.
Mhm.
So mattering like what they need, sometimes they might ask you to do a cut or two within like 24 hours.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, mattering on the project and mattering on the severity of like how rushed that order is. Again, like I know like in American Pipeline, like sometimes like if it's like a board driven show, sometimes they might give like a week to like develop the thumbnail. Then you have like a week to do the rough path. Then they give you like 2 weeks for like clean passes after notes, and then so forth. In anime productions, you don't have that. They will give you either you might have the mercies of having like 1 to 2 weeks, or if you're lucky, they might be like, hey, you got a 3 week timeline and we gave you like 10 cuts within 3 weeks. That's possible. Or they might be like, hey, motherfucker, you got like, we need this. Like, can you do this within like 24 hours? Like, we need like 5 cuts done within like 24 hours. And it's like, that's not possible. Some people can do it, but I'm not doing it.
Hmm.
Again, every anime, like every production will have its challenges. Again, like every industry, again, like when you're looking at it, we all see like the American industry with rose tinted glasses. Everybody like, ooh, stability. And I'm like, sometimes,
Yeah.
sometimes. If the industry likes and fucks with you, you can have stability. But if you're like me, you might be on the outside. Anime, everybody's like, ooh, kawaii, like I get to make anime. And I'm like, no, because you're not getting paid well and you're not getting the proper scheduling that you need, and they're going to take
Mhm.
advantage of you. Stop.
Yeah.
Because again, a lot of people go in with rose tinted glasses, and I'm like, if you tend to overwork yourself, they will abuse you, and that's any production.
Yeah. That is so true. It's really important to find kind of like what you're willing to do and your limits for any kind of shows, I think. And sometimes I don't know.
I feel like limits. Yeah, when you have no limits, you're just so tired all the time, and they just work you to death.
Yeah, you just kind of like crash and burn, and then I don't know, burnout it can like really creep up on you, you know? Sometimes you're like, I'm fine, you know?
Absolutely. And it's why like I'm the biggest, like again, like when everybody, like whenever somebody talks to me about this, like when it comes to burnout, if it's physical or mental, sometimes you just got to take a break.
Mm-hmm. Our final question, where we can ask you about creative block. Do you ever feel it? Do you go through creative block? And if you do, Derrick, how do you get through it?
Oh, absolutely. It's again like creative block happens to everybody. It's again just talking to a friend about this just yesterday. It can get to you physically and mentally. Like physically you could be like, oh well, I'm living life, but mentally I'm not. I'm just drained. I'm just overworking or overthinking. Physically I'm like, you could be like physically tired but mentally motivated, or you can be like like again it's vice versa to each other. Again, like I've had it happen to me. One of the biggest things is just surrounding myself like with good friends in art and just finding like inspirations. But at the same time, like I used to get like so overwhelmed because I was like, oh my god, like I'm not doing like any art, like I'm a terrible person, or like I'm a fraud. Even now, like it's when I left A24, I really felt that burnout. Like I was like I had like a goal for myself for 2024. I was like, I'm gonna give myself like 3 weeks to like catch up on like to rest, and like I'm gonna just make like my own projects. Where we just started 2025 and I have not created like no storyboards since A24. I've just worked anime because I got so creatively burned out or just blocked because of that. And it was just the overwork and just constant. It was just eating me alive. So again, it was like, again, just doing things like out of my comfort zone or just being able to just like, hey, I'm a rest, but I'm also like I'm gonna play video games, like getting back into playing video games, like let my creativity come from a different aspect, or reading up on like my animation books. I love buying like Japanese like artists like sketchbooks because they're like so filled with like great animation, like ref guides or just breakdown key animations or even like their character designs. It's amazing pencil works that was like pulling me in. I was like, it almost goes back to like how I used to like watch Ben, like when he used to do like draw over sessions with me, and I was like, how can this motherfucker draw so precise and it just be like the bare minimum line work, and I'd be like, oh, you crazy talented bastard. Yeah, so it would just take times to me to just being like, hey, I just need to take a moment, breathe, and find creative outlet elsewhere for a bit, or just again, just drawing, like getting back to my roots. Like I think that helped me get out of my creative block was actually going back and drawing not safe for work. But for the longest time, like I was so scared to draw it. And I remember watching that episode with Malik
Oh,
and just hearing
yay!
like just hearing him talk.
That's awesome.
And I was like, yes. I was like, yes. I feel motivated again. Like I feel like that scene with SpongeBob. Like I'm doing it. I'm doing it. I'm doing it.
My drawings are doing it. My drawings
yes,
are doing
like
it.
exactly. So when I watched that episode with Balak, and I was just like, my God, like I was like, my God, this man's spitting, like absolutely spitting facts right now.
That's such a fun episode. I'm so glad that you liked it. It's such a crazy and fun episode, that one.
It was amazing. Like I was just like, again, somebody that comes from drawing not safe work. Like again, the occasional boobas and salami. Like I enjoy it so much, and it's just one of those things. It's like it makes me happy. Like I feel like Akira Toriyama, since like when you used to watch like his like when you
Yes.
see like his like little doodles, and he
Yeah.
just like draw himself like just smoking and just reading like an XXX magazine. I'm just like, I was like, my man was living in his life right there. I was like, just I don't smoke, but you let me have like a cup of chocolate milk, and I'm just like like reading like my favorite doujin. It's like highlights.
Yeah.
This little master Roshi ass dude.
Oh my God. Yeah, those are so great. Like the little like author's note. And I think in Dr. Slump, he kind of like the main character is very much inspired by him. R.I.P.
I'm trying to draw Devil Dinosaur from the front.
From the front.
I'm looking at it, and yeah, these were the notes that we would get back. Like Ben would be like, "No,
don't do this." Yeah.
That's so funny.
Yeah, it is awkward.
Anything that you wanna plug, Derrick?
Oh man, God, just being able to plug on here. I really can't plug anything because again, like with the current circumstances of life right now, it's I just want to tell everybody like, yo, we are all in this together, and if you need an outlet, please do not let your creativity get stifled during these times of hectic and like turmoils. It's we are all in this together, and we are here to fight a cause if we need to. And if you need just an outlet, let your voice be heard through your creative endeavors.
That's amazing. Thank you for these very inspiring last words. And with that, it is the end of this creative block. Thank you so much, Derrick, for being our guest and sharing your story.
Oh, no problem. Thank you for having me on. And it kind of feels like a full circle just being on here because I remember like when the first Creative Block episode came out and I was still working at Titmouse and I was like, one day I'm gonna get on here.
I know, I remember that. And then I was like, today's the day.
And thanks to our listeners. Follow us on social media at CRTV Block, where we ask for drawing prompts and questions to ask our guests. Huge thanks to our editor Clemens for editing the podcast, Marco for helping us produce the show, and Ibuka for creating the short clips we've been putting online.
If you love our show, you can support us on Patreon. Becoming a patron gets you early access to interviews and access to your Discord community. You can also support us for free by sharing the podcast, liking the podcast on any other platforms, commenting. Comments really help with the algorithm, and following our channel. Click the link in the description of this episode to follow Derrick on all of his socials and to find our Patreon. I've been your host, V.
And I've been Sean. Keep being creative, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.